What character would realistically learn magic in Marvel? This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 626, Killing the Devil. Waste. The devil roared and kicked the angel in the face. Then he picked him up and beat him with his fists burning with fire. The angel's face was deformed by it, but the devil still had no intention of stopping. "Oh God, I don't want to watch it anymore." A white-haired lady covered her chest weakly, and she almost fainted. This scene had a great impact on her worldview, and the most terrifying thing was that she couldn't turn it off. Even if she closed her eyes, she could still see it. It was like someone had put a TV in her head. If this scene was an angel beating a demon, she would applaud and shout for it. Everyone, applaud, scream. But now it was the other way around. It was a demon beating an angel, so she couldn't accept it no matter what. This was contrary to the education she had received since childhood. She grew up in a family with a strong religious atmosphere, studied in a church school, and even entered the church when she became an adult. She is friendly and pious. She goes to the orphanage every week. She feels happy to help others, which is the source of her pain now. Why can angels be defeated by the devil? Is it the sin in our hearts that makes the devil more arrogant? She looked at her husband in confusion, but her husband looked at her with concern. "What's wrong, Joanna? Is your old heart problem coming back? God, answer me, quickly. I'll take you to the hospital." "Can't you see?" Joanna asked confusedly, and her husband looked even more puzzled. "What do you see?" "God, he can't see." Joanna screamed in her heart. To be precise, she screamed non-stop. The sound kept echoing in her heart, tearing open every memory box buried in her heart. For example, her husband was famous for being extremely naughty in the church school when he was a child, and he joined the hippie movement when he grew up. He joined the army and played in a rock band. Although he became a good person later, what if he was pretending? Joanna began to recall in her mind every time they went to church. At this moment, she realized that her husband had never shown any interest in going to church, and she had never noticed it before. "He can't see. He is not a religious person. He is a devil. He lurks among us." "Devil, devil, I must kill the devil." Joanna took a deep breath and calmed down. Her tongue seemed to be rusty, and her saliva turned into some bitter liquid. Tears almost burst out of her eyes, but she held back. When her husband looked at her with his concerned eyes, Joanna just smiled nonchalantly. "It's okay, dear," she replied in her usual tone. "Would you like some cookies or something? Did you make them?" The husband shrugged and made a little joke. "Well, it's 9:30 p.m. now, but if you made them, I'd certainly like to have a few. But if you feel uncomfortable, please tell me, okay? I don't want you to walk in front of me." With a smile, he gazed at her with loving eyes as he had in the past few decades and walked into the kitchen. Joanna's heart was no longer full of happiness. On the contrary, she wanted to vomit on the spot. "Devil, devil," she roared in her heart. "You can't see, but you still pretend to be pious. You devil in human skin." She stood in the kitchen, which she had just cleaned this morning. The floor was clean and every cabinet was spotless. At that time, she stood here with happiness. But now, she was full of hatred. Joanna reached out and pulled out a kitchen knife from the wooden knife rack. It was a gift from her husband for her 40th wedding anniversary. Holding the knife, she began to cheer herself up. The way is to pray. At this moment, she heard her husband talking on the phone with a friend in the living room. "Yes, it's me, Joseph." His tone sounded worried. "I think Joanna's heart problem has recurred. I will take her to the hospital tomorrow." "Hey, Mark, are you going to work tomorrow?" Okay, that's great." "Yes." She just covered her heart with her hands, her face full of pain. "Maybe she needs surgery?" "God, I hope it's not like that." After all, the first thing she said when she woke up after the operation last time was to thank God, not thank you, the doctor who worked for more than 10 hours. She heard her husband make a little joke. Although the worry in his voice could not be concealed, the flame of hatred burned in Joanna's heart. "You are really a devil," she screamed in her heart. "My disease was cured by God, not some so-called doctor. The doctor is just his messenger. She quietly held the knife and went to the living room. Her toes wrinkled in the plush slippers, and the often waxed floor made no sound. She came behind her husband like that. He sat in his seat as he had for the past 40 years. Joanna raised the knife and stabbed. With the first cut, her husband screamed and fell to the carpet. Blood gushed out, staining the carpet red. Joanna rushed over with a physical fitness that was absolutely not in line with her 70-year-old. Her hands were like iron clamps, and her eyes were red. But Joseph did not struggle. He stared at her blankly, his eyes becoming more and more dull until he lost his breath. Joanna stood up happily, and the figure of Jesus appeared behind her. With a satisfied smile, "You killed the devil, Joanna, the devil is still a devil, but the angel is no longer an angel, it is no longer the original angel. Half of its body turned into crystal clear glass, and its internal organs are clearly visible. This appearance has a different kind of beauty, but it is obviously not happy about it. How do you feel about your miserable appearance being broadcast live to the whole world?" Shenyan's words made it scream in resentment, but it could not make any resistance. The golden psychic flames followed its body like a thorn in its flesh. No matter what method was used, it could not avoid or extinguish them. What frightened it even more was that the man standing opposite it was still as relaxed as if he was on a picnic, but his eyes were not very gentle. "You will die," Shenyan said. "That's for sure. Although I don't know whether pure energy creatures like you have so-called souls, I think I will find the answer." "Don't even think about it," it screamed and rolled on the ground, trying in vain to extinguish the flames. "The Lord will find you. The Lord will kill you, and everyone else." For more updates tomorrow. Chapter 627 Judgment Day. "You killed the devil, Joanna." When this sentence came from behind her, the devout believer immediately knelt on the ground, and knelt beside her husband. The blood soaked her knees, but she didn't care. The man who looked like Jesus looked at her with a smile, his expression full of satisfaction and admiration. He raised his hand and placed his right hand on Joanna's forehead with compassion. "It must be very difficult for you to live with the devil for so many years, Jesus Christ." Joanna couldn't say anything except these 4 words. She raised her head dully and looked at him. There was nothing else on Jesus' face except a peaceful smile. They looked at each other, and people screamed and gunshots came from outside the house. Joanna heard a man shouting, "This is for the Lord, you shameless devil. How dare you pretend to be my daughter? I am your daughter, Dad. What are you doing? God, please, don't bang." Gunshots rang out, and Joanna heard something being smashed to pieces. I don't know if it was someone's heart or someone's head. Then the man's voice mixed with crying, "I killed the devil. I killed the devil." Jesus turned around. Joanna got up from the ground, followed him in fear, without asking why. How could a mortal ask God? She saw Jesus open the door and walk to the corner of the street. At this time, the dark sky was illuminated by the fire, and people screamed everywhere. This scene made her even more terrified. Could it be that the doomsday predicted in the Holy Book has come? Jesus seemed to see her thoughts and turned back to say to her, "Don't panic, Joanna, I have come." Yes, God has come, the Son of God and His Spirit. Joanna's heart calmed down immediately. He walked straight forward, and a man was crying while holding a broken body. The body was still wearing a floral dress, and a shotgun that had just been used was placed next to him. "Raise your head." When he walked in front of him, Jesus said seriously, "Look at me, Chris." The man called Chris raised his head with despair in his eyes. His eyes were like a pool of dead water, and there was no more ripples in it. Jesus reached out his hand, took the body from his arms, and then threw it to the ground, throwing flames from his hands and burning it to ashes. "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted," Jesus said. A foul smell floated up, and the burning street suddenly became quiet. People gathered around. Everyone had blood on their bodies, wounds on their faces, and everyone looked desperate, until they saw Jesus, just like lambs seeing their shepherds. "Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled." Jesus raised his arms high, and his naked body shone with a holy light. "I have come," his voice echoed in the crowd, and the trembling body couldn't help but calm down. The man who was in pain and despair before her lay down at his feet like a pious dog, and touched his forehead to the back of his feet. Jesus looked at him lovingly, and then spoke in a low voice. I know your despair, I know your pain, but the kingdom of heaven is near. You should repent. He was no longer gentle, kind, or full of love, but stared at everyone sternly. Everyone who looked at him couldn't help but bowed their heads and fell to the ground. Someone asked tremblingly, how can I repent? My God, you have taken the first step. Jesus smiled. You have killed the devil lurking around you. Satan sent his evil to lurk around you, just to prevent you from ascending to heaven. But, he suddenly emphasized, this does not mean that your sins have been eliminated. You still need to do one last thing to pass through the door of rebirth on the day of judgment. What should we do? It's very simple. Jesus smiled and the fire in his hand ignited again. Those who lived in darkness saw a great light, and those who lived in the land of the shadow of death, upon them the light has shone. From that time on, Jesus began to preach, saying that the kingdom of heaven is near, and you should repent. Shenyan recited these two sentences, but he was not pious at all. The angel's face had been completely burned into glass by him, and he was stepping on it at this time, unable to move. Its wings were torn off and thrown aside, like tattered cloth. Its eye sockets were empty, and flames filled them, rolling continuously. Great light. Shenyan opened his hands, and the dark night sky suddenly lit up, and a huge moon formed by pure magic power rose slowly behind him. He asked sarcastically, now the great light is here, angel, where is your Jesus Christ? Don't be proud. The angel replied weakly, you will see him soon. Shenyan raised his hand and pointed to the sky. The moon got closer and closer until it illuminated the entire mountaintop. This live broadcast to all believers around the world seemed extremely weird at this time. The devil was arrogant, and the moon rose behind him. The angel was lying on the ground, dying, his body broken. This was certainly not the scene they wanted to see. Shenyan knew this, and he also knew what tricks the angel was playing. Absorbing faith. His face must have been familiar to these guys, and the angel naturally knew that it could not beat Shenyan. Therefore, from the beginning, this was not a fair fight. But all its actions afterwards were undoubtedly to make this battle fair. For example, faith projection, projecting the scene of its battle with Shenyan into the hearts of any mortal who believed in heaven, while deepening control. Shallow believers became fanatics, and fanatics became completely blind people. By collecting faith, it strengthens its body. It has absorbed a lot, and at this moment, it is far from as weak as it looks on the surface. But it is not yet to the point where it can arm wrestle with the mage. Shenyan concluded that it still has a backup. The question is, where is the backup? Where is its Jesus? You've said many times, I'll see him soon, but so far, I haven't seen a hair of your Jesus. Shenyan taunted it while scanning the world with his mental tentacles. He found nothing. In the information fed back by the tentacles, the world was extremely normal, even a little too normal. He squinted. It was too normal. This was actually abnormal. The wizard suddenly raised his head, and a huge spark rose in the night sky, followed by a man's deafening shout, Satan. He smiled, raised his hand, and the moon floated up and collided with the spark. There are 3 more updates. A little bit stuck. Chapter 628. God is a false. A huge explosion erupted in the sky above the entire earth. The sky was full of flames, and the night sky was like a black fog that was burned clean, with only a little bit of it remaining. A figure appeared from the scarred sky. He was naked, but exuded a divine light. His body was not made of energy, but real flesh and blood. Shenyan felt that he should recognize his face. Which modern person would not recognize such a complete face? He smiled and shook his head, and crushed the head of the angel on the ground. Its broken body trembled slightly, and suddenly it overflowed into pure energy, and was dragged into the shadows by the tentacles under the feet of the mage in the air. You killed an angel, the Son of God from the sky said, but his tone did not seem angry. His attitude was like an outing, so uncomfortable. Let me correct you, I didn't kill it, I ate it. The mage smiled slightly. And I've eaten a lot. Jesus was slightly startled. Oh, I didn't know that. But as Satan, you are obviously qualified to be killed by me personally. After I kill you, This world will let's save the part of making threats for later. I will be happy to say them to your corpse, Jesus. As for now, Shenyan clasped his hands together, and the mountain collapsed under his feet. The overwhelming mudslide and the trees mixed in it rolled down, but when it was about to touch the human village at the foot of the mountain, someone pressed the pause button. No one saw the weird scene, which was good, because it preserved their rationality. The mudslide swept up, in a form that absolutely violated any physical laws, and in a form beyond human imagination. It turned into a rock dragon and rushed towards Jesus in the sky. The Son of God just raised his hand and simply said one word, "Stop." So, the rock dragon really stopped where it was. Shenyan narrowed his eyes. What Jesus just did is actually very simple to say. He gave life to the rock dragon created by magic, and then commanded it with his authority. As the creator of the dragon, he was indeed qualified to give orders to his creation. Jesus stroked the rough forehead of the rock dragon with a smile, and then stepped on it barefoot. Its hundreds of meters long body lay quietly at Jesus' feet, without moving at all. "Hey, I have a question, Jesus," Shenyan suddenly asked. "It's okay to tell me, even if you are Satan, I will explain it to you. How is Joseph?" His question made Jesus stunned, and he asked in confusion, "Who, Joseph?" "Your father." "My father is Jehovah, not Joseph." Shenyan nodded thoughtfully. "Well, so, do you want to hear a joke?" "Of course." The wizard laughed maliciously. "It's like this. Do you know who the earliest atheist was?" "I think it was your father, the carpenter Joseph." "You see, one day he came home from work and his wife's belly suddenly became big. She told him in a mysterious way that this was the son of Jehovah. Joseph was a pious man, at least at that time. He didn't say anything to his wife, nor did he slap your mother, the Virgin Mary, to the ground and beat her. But the next day, the honest carpenter went to the construction site and talked about this with his co-workers, and then everything changed in an instant. Think about that scene, Jesus." Joseph told his co-workers, "Hey, my wife is pregnant." "Really? Oh, congratulations, Joseph, you are quite capable." Everyone came to congratulate him, but Joseph said the second half of the sentence with a stern face. "That is not my child, it is Jehovah's. His name is Jesus." So Joseph's co-workers looked at each other, and after a long time, someone asked cautiously, "Are we going to beat up Jehovah?" Shenyan laughed out loud. "Do you know what the best part of this joke is? It is that if Joseph really existed, just like you, if he really existed in history, he must be an atheist. Not only him, but also his co-workers. I bet his co-workers will keep an eye on their wives when they get home from get off work that day, and then start searching for all the people named Jehovah within 100 miles. Jesus frowned. He was not angry about the joke, nor was he angry because Shenyan joked about his mother and father. What really made him angry was another thing. "You said I am fictional," Jesus said in a deep voice. "I am standing in front of you now. I am Jesus. I was born in Bethlehem. I am the Son of Man. I am the Messiah, and I am Ishmael. No, you are nothing." The mage's light words made him furious, and flames burst out from the depths of his eyes. The indescribable terrifying anger turned into substance and descended into reality. Huge fireballs crossed the sky and appeared in front of Shenyan in an instant. Each of them was as big as a star, and each of them exuded terrifying energy. Jesus stood in front of them, with long hair and beard fluttering, and his eyes glowing like lava. "Okay, Jesus, you seem very angry, so, how about we make a bet?" "No, I won't talk to you anymore. Talking to you is equivalent to humiliating myself, you hateful Satan." Shenyan laughed more and more happily, and his figure turned into a light blue light and disappeared on the spot. In the next second, he appeared outside the earth. The huge tentacles passed through the portal and pulled all the fireballs behind Jesus into the shadow realm. A teeth-grinding chewing sound came from it. Jesus looked up at the starry sky and heard Shenyan's voice. "Come up, Jesus. I have another joke to tell you." The Son of God's face darkened, and wings suddenly grew from his back. He floated up and turned into a burning star, rushing straight into the universe, but he could not find any trace of the wizard. His voice vibrated in this vacuum where sound could not be transmitted, and every word was clearly transmitted to Jesus' ears. "You obviously don't know much about human history, Jesus, and you don't know much about human nature. If you really existed in history, you wouldn't need Judas or the guy who hammered nails into your hands and feet. You would be thrown into the river by Joseph and drowned when you were just born. Humans are very selfish, Jesus. Do you think a man would let his wife give birth to a bastard who didn't know where he came from?" Enough. Jesus trembled all over, and the flames were blazing. Several stars closer to him were immediately burned into fragments. He raised his hands and roared, "You have insulted me enough. I can't stand it anymore. You must die, Satan." However, Shenyan's voice sounded from behind him. It was as soft as a whisper. "I am not Satan, dear Son of God, and you are not Jesus. I am sorry." Chapter 629. The world has never been related to gods. 4 solid shadow tentacles suddenly bound Jesus' hands and feet, and the endless human faith in his body suddenly broke at this moment. Jesus heard a chewing sound. He turned his head suddenly, broke free from the tentacles, and ignited the fire that had destroyed the world in his hands, but there was no one behind him. "Come out, face me. Are you just hiding?" "I'm not hiding. You're just too blind to see where I am." Shenyan's voice was still frivolous and smiling, as if he didn't take this battle seriously at all. This attitude made Jesus even more angry. He almost screamed, "You can't do this. This is a battle between you and me. We are enemies." "Enemies? Oh, what else? Are you going to cry?" "Hey, how about another joke, Jesus?" "You don't need to pout your lips when you whistle. You just need to put your palm next to your lips." Jesus was silent for a second. 2 seconds. He closed his eyes, his palms trembled, and his face was visibly red. The mage continued to output, "Wow, you are red, Jesus. This is a wonder." "Do you know what red means?" Shenyan said in a shrill voice. "Red. Warning, warning." Jesus said nothing, but judging from his expression, he was obviously extremely angry. His hair was as scary as if it was burning with flames, and the fire in his eyes was getting stronger and stronger. His body began to grow larger until it was larger than the planet. The giant swung his arm violently, and the planets in the Milky Way were smashed into pieces, including the sun and the moon, while the earth behind him was unscathed. The mage's voice with laughter still came from the depths of the universe. "I really have to thank Eddie Murphy." The old guy never thought that his jokes could really make Jesus so angry. Jesus no longer paid attention to his trash talk, at least on the surface. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes. The fire shone through his eyelids, like 2 huge fireballs that never stopped burning, which was daunting. In this cold vacuum, he looked straight into the depths of the universe, following the traces of the wizard. He went deeper and deeper until he came to an unknown galaxy millions of light years away, and then he opened his eyes. "Satan!" he screamed and stretched out his hands. With a flap of his wings, he crossed millions of light years and arrived in front of Shenyan. The size of the wizard at this moment was not even worth mentioning compared to him. A hair of Jesus was bigger than his whole body, but Shenyan still had a smile on his face. "I found you. I found you." Jesus twitched the muscles on his face like a neurotic. "You shameless villain, collection of sins, king of hell, Satan. Today is the day of fate. I will kill you. I will kill you." "You really don't talk like Jesus at all." Shenyan yawned. "You look like a teenage American high school student." "Hey, Jesus. If you are going to be a gunman in a school shooting, I think the reason may be because your mother scolded you for stepping on the water surface of the bathtub when you were taking a bath at home. Is that right?" Enough. Jesus didn't get to say the next sentence. He heard a hush, and the next second, Shenyan disappeared. The stars dimmed one by one, like actors taking their curtain call, leaving his sight one by one. Suddenly, he felt a chill. Shenyan's voice came softly into his ears. "You are just a child, Jesus. Your memory is false, and your personality is fake. In fact, you have nothing to do with heaven at all. That angel created you with false beliefs, and you know nothing about it. You only know that you want to save the world. But does the world need you to save it? You are a harmless wooden sculpture. Just stay on your cross. Why do you have to walk around in the world?" The stars were completely extinguished, and Jesus opened his mouth in fear. However, the air seemed to disappear as well. Until then, He still hadn't realized that he didn't need to breathe at all. His lungs were aching because human knowledge was telling him a fact. Humans need to breathe. Thinking of this, he widened his eyes in horror. Yes, you finally realized it. Jesus, you are God. How can God need to breathe? Shenyan smiled and clenched his right hand, and a hint of darkness appeared in the gaps between his fingers, which spread into the air. He clenched his fist little by little, and when it was completely closed, a scream came from his palm, and the sound of something slowly breaking. Above his head, the starry sky remained the same. Under his feet, the mountains stood tall. Everything seemed to have not changed, and he had never left. The wizard loosened his palm, and the broken wood chips fell down and disappeared with the wind. Joanna only felt that she had a terrible nightmare. In the dream, she was possessed by a ghost and inexplicably wanted to pick up a knife to kill the husband who had spent her life with her. When she woke up, she found herself lying on the sofa, covered with a thin blanket. There was only one small light on in the living room. In the dim light, she fumbled to find her reading glasses and put them on. Her husband, Joseph, was sitting in his seat with his head down, silent. Seeing this scene, her heart was broken. Could it be that I really killed Joseph? Oh my God, how could I do such a thing? The old woman trembled and rushed over, crashing into her husband's arms, crying and holding his cheek. But she saw a pair of eyes that were already old, but still couldn't hide their love. What's wrong, Joe? He called her nickname when she was young, and his tone was the same as always, instantly bringing her back to her youth. Why are you crying? Hey, I'm here, don't cry, okay? Joanna stared at him in a daze. Her heart was full of waves. 1,000 different pictures flashed in front of her eyes one by one. Their first meeting, their first date, their first kiss. On the wedding day, her father's eyes were reluctant but joyful. They got married under the gaze of God. Then, Joanna suddenly realized a fact. The reason why she spent her life with this man was not because of God, but because of love. She loved him, and he loved her. They spent each other's life together. In their lives, God never stepped down from his cross. There was only each other. Joanna hugged him tightly. A father's crying came from outside the window, and his daughter's puzzled questions. Her innocence and childishness could not be concealed from the words, "Dad, why are you crying? Today is my birthday." It's better to update the extra chapter of movie night, and sort out the main text. The author has been very unlucky recently. The toothache has improved a little, and the seasonal rhinitis has come. Chapter 630 The Growing Problem. A light blue armchair was floating in the universe, looking lonely until Shenyan emerged from the light and sat on it. He sighed comfortably and raised his right hand. Some wood chips floated from the distant galaxy and gathered into a small wooden sculpture in his hand. It was the crucifix. Shenyan held a cross and said lazily, "You should know that if I don't get what I want, I will continue to repeat this process many times. Right, Jesus?" Jesus said nothing. He had lost the ability to have a normal conversation. He repeated too many times between death and life, and his sanity was completely destroyed. For this false idol, what really made him collapse was not death, but that he, as the Messiah, had no ability to fight back in front of Shenyan. It was like this from the beginning. When he realized this, he collapsed. The wizard raised his head boredly and began to count the stars. It was the first time for him to do such a thing in the universe. In the past, he went to the universe mostly to do things, such as killing some aliens, killing a dozen aliens, killing a lot of aliens. In other words, quiet time is rare even for him. What should he do? Eternal heaven has found him. There is no need to even think about it. He knew about this long before he came to this universe. But the problem is, how can he make those angels retract their claws? What the Supreme Sorcerer Spider-Man said is indeed true, and he also saw this from the memory of the little angel he killed. Many worlds have been invaded by eternal heaven, and they are being taken away from the spider totem little by little. Considering his special nature, once eternal heaven succeeds, the consequences are completely foreseeable. People will become fanatics without self-awareness, and the only purpose of living is to provide energy for eternal heaven and the angels. At this point, this is no longer a question of helping to save many worlds or I don't like angels, but a real problem related to the entire multiverse. Tony Bald Stark is drinking. It was obvious that he was holding a goblet in his hand, with red wine swaying in it. The middle-aged man looked melancholy and depressed, and the reason was actually very simple. He was despised when he went to wake up his daughter this morning. The little princess said he was annoying and that he had a bad mouth. It was hard for Tony to accept this. He could accept that he had bad breath, but he couldn't accept that his daughter despised him. So he was now slumped on his sofa and started drinking at 10 in the morning. "Sir, Agent Coulson sent you a video conference invitation." "Reject, Jarvis." "Today, no. Turn down any meetings in the next 3 days. I'm not in the mood, and I'm not interested in sitting with a bunch of middle-aged and elderly people with big bellies to discuss stocks and company earnings. Let them all eat shit." "Wait, who did you say sent the video conference invitation just now?" Jarvis' voice actually showed a rare hesitation. "Agent Coulson, sir." "Do you want to reject it?" Tony raised his hand and rubbed his eyebrows, and put the goblet on the coffee table. He put his feet up and said, "Don't refuse yet, but give him a call." Dialing. A few seconds later, Coulson's voice appeared in his living room. "Hey, Tony, do you know where he is? I thought you were calling me." "No, this is important." "Listen, Tony, now is not the time to joke." Coulson's voice was unusually nervous. "If you know where he is, or you can contact him, please ask him to call me back, okay?" Tony put his feet down. He rarely saw Coulson show this attitude. In fact, in the years after Nick Fury's death, Coulson became more and more calm. He was still the good guy, but on the other hand, he began to look more and more like the dead Nick Fury. It was because of this that Tony frowned. "What is it, Coulson?" "I think you should tell me first. This is very important. Very important." "Wait, what's that sound over there?" What sound?" Jarvis interrupted at the right time, interrupting the two useless and weak humans from continuing to speculate. The artificial intelligence said politely, "Sir, it is detected that the super life you specially named Kara Zor-El is approaching rapidly." "What's the matter? Why is she here?" "Kara? Who is that?" "Tony, aren't you married? Why did you give someone a code name for a super life?" This is not what you think, Coulson." Cough. "I'm going to hang up. We'll talk about it later." Tony clapped his hands and hung up the phone. He stood up from the sofa and took the wine glass in his hand again. Coincidentally, there was a knock on his French window. Tony turned around and found that Kara, who had met him once before, was looking at him with an embarrassed face. "Looking at this picture alone, it's nothing, but the problem is, the girl has another acquaintance in the crook of her right arm." Wang. The fat wizard was embarrassed at this time. He broke free from Kara's right hand, stood on the ground, and adjusted his rope. Tony turned his head and made a gesture, and the French window was opened. Wang and Kara walked in. The Kryptonian girl was still curiously looking around, but Wang pursed his lips tightly. He looked at Tony, who didn't even turn his head, and sighed. "If you want to laugh, then laugh." As soon as the voice fell, Tony laughed out loud without any scruples. "Ha ha 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 ha." He laughed so hard that he was out of breath and almost spilled the wine in the glass. You actually, my God, if Strange saw what you just did, he would definitely record it with magic and play it once a year at the party." Wang stared at him expressionlessly and coughed twice. "I believe he will do that, but if he does, I will ask him to play what you did at his bachelor party." The laughter stopped abruptly. Tony frowned and gave a disapproving look. "I remember you all promised me that no one recorded that incident." "Maybe." Wang showed a very polite smile, and the veins on his forehead were throbbing. "Let's talk about business. Have you seen him recently?" "Why is everyone asking me about him today?" Tony rolled his eyes and finally drank the wine in the glass. "No, I haven't seen him at all, and I don't know where he went." "What's wrong?" Wang frowned and muttered to himself. "This is a big trouble." There is another chapter. Chapter 631, Deprivation of Magic. "Oh, the troubles you mages talk about. Hey, lady, you can't touch that thing." Kara carefully withdrew her hand, showing an apologetic smile, and put down the statue in her hand without leaving a trace. Tony turned back and continued. "Where was I just talking about? Oh, the troubles you mages talk about are all quite incomprehensible." Wang. "So what is it this time? An invasion of hell? An invasion of heaven? An invasion of demons from another world dimension? A large group of tentacle monsters eating people on New York Avenue. Wang shook his head. None of them, Tony, he said in a deep voice. It's more troublesome than those. He raised his hands and held them in front of Tony. The two stared at each other for 5 minutes, and Tony didn't see any problem. He asked uncertainly, you didn't cut your nails? I think I really forgot to cut them. As soon as the words came out, Wang realized that he had been led astray. He clasped his hands together in annoyance and clapped them heavily. No, it's not a question of whether I cut my nails or not. My magic disappeared. The magic of all the wizards and Kamartaj disappeared. We still have magic in our bodies, but the spells? Wang made a gesture and even added a whoosh sound effect. Gone. Tony said nothing, just touched his chin. Well, Jarvis, what day is today? It's not April 1st, sir. So today is not April Fool's Day? Yes, sir, today is not April Fool's Day. Wang's face gradually became a little dark, the standard black face. His appearance was still quite intimidating when he made this expression. At least Tony immediately raised his hands and saluted on the spot. I know no more jokes. Okay, where is Strange? He is maintaining the power in the Sanctum Sanctorum. The magic is gone, but the magic is still there. He must always maintain the barrier all over the world. Wang waved his arm firmly. This is the responsibility of the Sorcerer Supreme, so I came to find you, of course. Thank you, Miss Kara. Did anyone call me just now? Yes, I called you, Ms. Kara. Thank you for bringing me here. Kara smiled embarrassedly. It's okay, it's a small matter. In fact, I miss the feeling of flying. Although playing games every day feels good, I always have an inexplicable sense of guilt. Tony glanced at her, then at Wang, and suddenly laughed again. Don't tell me you really were carried all the way here by her. Tony Stark. Okay, no more jokes. Ahem, let's talk about business. Tony's expression became serious. So, Strange doesn't know where he went? The Sorcerer Supreme knows, Wang said expressionlessly. He went to another dimension to deal with the problem of the close connection between dimensions, and he hasn't come back yet. But we can't miss any tiny possibility. He may have come back, but he didn't go to the Sanctum Sanctorum, so I came to ask you. Then why didn't you call me? Tony asked puzzled. Or don't you have a mobile phone? Wang didn't say anything, just turned his head and faced Tony with his profile. After a while, he whispered, we didn't pay for the phone bills before, and used magic to fool around, but now there is a problem. So we can't contact you. The scene became a little awkward for a while, very awkward. Even Tony was the same. He looked up and looked at the ceiling of his house, and after a minute he said, hey, the ceiling of my house looks pretty good, right? Strange screamed in pain. This can't be blamed on him. I mean, most wizards will make the same sound when suffering from this kind of pain. He is now floating in the air, and a huge amount of magic is pouring out of the pores all over his body. Just looking at the description, you may think it's nothing, but in fact it's a big problem. When wizards cast spells, magic comes out naturally as you breathe, drink water, and eat. For them, using magic in this way is painless, but the way Strange casts it is as if all the hair in his pores has grown back, and at the same time, it is being pulled out continuously. The spirit of the Sanctum Sanctorum floats beside him, looking at him worriedly. She tries to cast a spell, but the mysterious force that makes all spells disappear in the world has obviously not let her go. The spirit of the Sanctum Sanctorum is still there, but it can no longer release any magic. Strange screams again, this time longer, and sweat breaks out all over his body, gathering into small streams on the ground. After a while, he asked with a gasp, how much energy is needed for the barrier? The spirit of the sanctuary flew aside in a hurry, picked up a book with an ancient style, opened the first page and took a look. I'm afraid it's still a long way off. Sorcerer Supreme. Strange squeezed out a muffled groan from his throat. Please, Guardian. There is a cell phone in the right pocket of my coat on the sofa. Can you bring it to me? I want to make a call. The spirit of the sanctuary did as he was asked. Strange raised his right hand with difficulty to unlock the phone, then dialed his wife's number. Hey, it's me, Christine. Listen, I have to go to a meeting in the wizarding world. Yes. What, druids? They're there too. What's the matter? You want a talking cat as a pet? Okay, I'll talk to the druids after the meeting. But the meeting may last for a while, so I won't be able to go home for about a week. Okay? Yes, that place is protected by magic, and I can't make a phone call. Okay, love you, goodbye. After the call ended, he immediately put down his hand, and the phone fell to the floor with a bang. But Strange didn't care about that at all. He twitched all over, and a huge amount of magic was drawn out again, and the magic network under the Sanctum Sanctorum was used to supply the huge end all over the world. This pain is indescribable. Strange's eyes were even gray. He floated in the air, his muscles cramped, and his stomach was protesting him. Tears flowed involuntarily. He suffered too much pain, and his body collapsed before his will. Guardian, help me, Strange said with difficulty. Bring me a blanket. Okay, I'm so cold. The book doesn't say that you will feel cold if you use too much magic at once. Damn it, I have to add this to the textbook later. Do we have that thing? He had already started talking to himself to distract himself, and the spirit of the Sanctum Sanctorum could do nothing but nod. Chapter 632 Cold and Ruthless. There is a saying that goes like this: when you are eating, your enemy is exercising, and when you are exercising, your enemy has finished exercising. On the surface, this sentence can be said to be meaningless. After all, according to this calculation, your enemy is most likely not living in the same time zone as you. However, on the other hand, this sentence can actually accurately describe Shenyan's current situation. He is still eating, and the enemy has already crossed the exercise stage and has finished exercising, and he doesn't know anything yet. At this moment, he is dealing with the Supreme Sorcerer Spider-Man, who has been suspended in time in the Multiverse Spider-Man Self-Help Center. A group of Spider-Men surrounded them and whispered. They have Russian Peter who looks like Brad Pitt, 3 Peters who are still high school students, a Peter who has already succeeded and opened a company but then went bankrupt and divorced himself, and a Peter from an old tough detective movie. Of course, there is also the Spider-Man closest to Shenyan, Gwen Stacy. She got a little too close. Does she really think we can't see it? Asked a Peter. I mean, it's too obvious. What's it got to do with you? The other Peter replied. He looked nonchalant, playing a game console that started with the letter N. Isn't this normal? That guy is pretty handsome. If I were a woman, I'd like him too. His words drew a strange look from Spider-Man, and he realized what he had said only a dozen seconds after he said it. No, it's not what you think. Let me explain. He waved his hands feebly, trying to explain, but no one was listening. Everyone's eyes were attracted by Shenyan. To be precise, they were attracted by the light in his hand. The white light didn't seem hot. It looked like gentle silk in the eyes, dotted with blue pearls, beautiful and hard-pounding. They all slowed down their breathing at the same time, and the spider sense in their minds suddenly sent a special feeling that was not very painful. What is this? Gwen couldn't help asking. Shenyan didn't answer directly, but waved his hand. The action looked easy and freehand. He would not tell the Spider-Man what it was, nor would he ever explain it. As for the Sorcerer Supreme Spider-Man who was being treated, he might vomit after waking up. The beautiful white light was actually the body of the angel killed by Shenyan, and the blue light spots in it were his magic. The magic was used as a kind of control link to turn the angel's body into a certain condition. Some of the concepts of the Sorcerer Supreme Spider-Man were taken away, and what Shenyan was doing now was actually returning. It was simple to say, but difficult to do. Nothing involving conceptual existence was simple. The white light turned into a ribbon and wrapped around the body of the Sorcerer Supreme Spider-Man. His incomplete body was supplemented one by one, and the missing limbs grew out at a speed that was uncomfortable. After a third of a second, his suspended time began to flow again, and then he opened his eyes and took a deep breath. How does it feel? Shenyan asked. I'm still alive? The Sorcerer Supreme Spider-Man asked in disbelief, his hands touching his body, totally unable to believe this fact. Yes, you're still alive, Shenyan said, and suddenly turned his head to look at the Spider-Man, who suddenly became noisy. The sight made them realize one thing at the same time, and soon someone asked, Should we go out? Russian Peter asked. It seems so. His eyes are so scary. Yeah, you think so too? A bit like a policeman. A few minutes later, the scene was quiet. How do you feel? Shenyan repeated the previous question again. This time, he was much more serious than before. The Sorcerer Supreme Spider-Man did the same. He took off his mask. His expression was serious. Not very good. The conceptual damage has been repaired, but I can feel its existence. By the way, I am also Peter Parker. You should only be able to feel some vague consciousness and fragmented thoughts. Its main consciousness has been erased by me. The wizard pinched his chin and began to analyze carefully. But it's still strange. I've dealt with angels from eternal heaven. Those I've killed weren't as strong as this one. This angel can deprive you of certain concepts, can infuse false beliefs so that a wooden sculpture on a cross really has the same power as a god. Can you do that? Supreme Mage Peter knew what he meant. The remains of the angel were used by Shenyan to repair his body. We can say that from this moment on, he can also be regarded as one of the angels to some extent. An angel with their power and a human mind. I can try, but to be honest, I don't want this thing to exist in my body for too long. Supreme Mage Peter frowned. I can use part of its power. In about 3 days, I can completely repair the conceptual damage, so our experiment time is about 3 days. The two didn't talk much, but they were sure that the other party wanted to use this for experiments, and they had no objection to it. What else can I say? The wizard's thirst for knowledge? Shenyan thought further than that. Don't worry about the experiment. How much do you know about the eternal heaven? Before I woke up, I had no idea what this eternal heaven you mentioned was. I have dealt with some angels, but they were easy to talk to. Unlike this thing. Peter pointed at his body, and started hunting me all over the world. As he spoke, he pursed his lips. Those fragmented thoughts and incomplete memory images, I can see them all, including that huge soul furnace. Do they really use humans as fuel? Yes, it's real. Shenyan nodded, expressionless. Tracing back to the source, I'm afraid that the heavens and angels of all the worlds in the endless sea of stars are creatures generated by their information and disturbance, including those who believe in them and those who use their spells. I have dealt with them once before. I used a healing spell from heaven in that world, and not long after, a dragon in that world underwent some kind of near-heavenly mutation. Peter frowned and began to take deep breaths. Yes, I saw it. Those broken memories. That dragon will become the outpost of their invasion. Damn, there are people who believe in them in almost all parallel worlds. That is, if they want. A cold smile broke out on the wizard's face. All worlds can be invaded in an instant. Chapter 633 Qualifications for participating in the war. After reaching this conclusion, Shenyan did not even explain to anyone, and returned directly to his world. What a joke. If he stayed any longer, he would only see the cold bodies of everyone. The moment he stepped through the dimensional portal, he felt anxious, and the moment he returned to his world, the mage felt unprecedented peace. In fact, it was a little too calm. Originally, according to his perception, there were traces of magic used all over the world, but now there are none. They disappeared. The magic still exists, even including the Sanctum Sanctorum barrier above his head. But the magic disappeared. He frowned, snapped his fingers, and a portal to the Sanctum Sanctorum opened immediately. Just as he was about to enter, the door was closed after a sudden flash. He did not stop the supply of magic, and did not even have the idea of closing it. Shenyan narrowed his eyes, instinctively feeling that something had happened. Still can't get in touch. With hope, Wang asked this question. Tony just shook his head. They had been trying to call Strange's cell phone for more than half an hour, but the horse-faced wizard didn't answer no matter what. The Sanctum Sanctorum itself was protected by magic. Anyone who tried to enter it had to provide a pass. At the moment when everyone's magic disappeared, Wang couldn't find a way to enter the Sanctum Sanctorum. He couldn't even see the place. It's really bad luck to open the door for bad luck. It's so bad luck. Wang sighed and threw out an old saying in Shandong dialect, attracting Tony's puzzled gaze. Jarvis explained to him in his headphones that it was a dialect from Shandong, which made him more confused. Wang, are you from Shandong? Are you sure you want to talk to me about this now? Yes, I am the Wizard of Camartage, but I go back to my hometown for 4 months every year." Wang glared at him unhappily. He wanted to say more, but his thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the game coming from the side. He looked up. If it wasn't Kara, who else could it be? The Kryptonian girl who came from another dimension was sitting on Tony's comfortable lazy sofa playing Sony's official exclusive masterpiece, a very special doomsday survival road movie game. She was enjoying the game and occasionally ate a piece of potato chips at hand. Wang's cheek twitched, but Tony laughed dumbly. "She is really." The bald and big-bellied Iron Man thought for a long time but couldn't come up with a suitable adjective. Under Wang's contemptuous eyes, he finally spit out a slightly strange word: naive. "You should know that Kara can hear you talking, right?" Wang asked. Tony turned around and asked, "Kara, can you hear me?" Kara didn't answer him at all. Her eyes focused on the huge TV screen. Tony turned around and shrugged. "Well, it seems that she can't hear." "Has this happened before, Wang?" "If this happened, it would definitely be recorded in history books." Wang frowned and said, "But in fact, it's not that there haven't been similar things, but that time we took away magic power, and the dimensional demons have been driven out of our world. They can't come back." Tony's eyes widened. As a person who often hangs out with Strange and Shenyan, although he doesn't know magic, it doesn't mean that he knows nothing about magic knowledge. He naturally knows what the dimensional demon is, which made him gasp. "What the hell? When did you do such a big thing? Why didn't I receive any notification?" "My magic knowledge base needs a major update. Jarvis, file it for me, and after this is over, we will go to the Camartage library to update all the files." "Got it, sir." Wang ignored his antics and didn't complain about why he was notified. He just sighed slightly frustratedly. "It's meaningless to say this now, Tony. The mentor passed away, and he is not here now. It's not that I am pessimistic or think too little of myself, but in the face of this level of dangerous situation, we are all useless. Do you understand? If you don't have enough talent, you don't even have the qualifications to participate in the war. This is very realistic. Hey, are you listening to me?" Wang looked at Tony, who had put on sunglasses at some point, very unhappily and asked. He received a gesture from the latter, indicating that he should wait. 2 minutes later, he nodded. "Done." "What's done?" "To qualify you to participate in the war." Tony took off his sunglasses and smiled heartily. "I am Iron Man, Wang. I don't have any other hobbies except making various armors. And, by coincidence, my 2 friends happen to be the most powerful and second most powerful wizards in the world." Wang pointed at himself expressionlessly. "The third most powerful. Well, that doesn't matter. Come." Tony took him to the huge balcony of his house. 2 meteors streaked across the sky and soon made an emergency landing in front of them. There were 2 cold cylindrical cabins about 2 meters high. Tony stood in front of them and turned back to smile at Wang. "You know, this is still his suggestion. He said that fingerprint and eyeball authentication are not safe, and the soul will never deceive anyone. Look, Wang, this is the masterpiece of Tony Stark and Shenyan." He raised his hands arrogantly, and in an instant, the version of Iron Man without a belly seemed to be back. But it was only a moment. The current Iron Man is a middle-aged man in his 50s, with a bald head and a greasy belly. He even wears beach pants and an open-chested shirt with a palm tree pattern. The cabin made a humming sound, a blue light flashed, and a cold voice sounded on the balcony. "Soul test passed. Welcome to use the composite armor, Tony Stark." With a low humming sound, the door of the cabin slowly opened. Revealed in front of them were 2 rings that had nothing to do with the armor, one black and one white. Wang's eyes changed from expectation to confusion. "Rings?" "Yes, it's a ring. Do you want black or white?" "I like black." "Do I have a choice?" "You can bring it up, but whether I will agree is another matter." Tony smiled and took the white ring out of the cabin and threw it to Wang. The ring had just been in his hand, and a cool feeling shocked Wang's brain, as if it was some kind of instinct. He immediately put the ring on. What happened next was completely beyond his imagination. Tomorrow's 4th update. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo fanfic novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 634 Death Arena. Endless pure magic flowed out of the ring, turning into visible magic veins. An armor like an exoskeleton was formed on his body. Wang looked at his hands at a loss, but Tony waved his hand to calm him down. You are a wizard, Wang. Aren't these things basic principles for you? What kind of basic principles are these? Wang looked at him with a smile, and his vision was gradually replaced by a pure red. The magic veins were gradually covering his entire body, and the exoskeleton armor began to solidify little by little. He said, "You may have a misunderstanding of my level of knowledge, Tony. Why do you say this is easy?" That's what he said. This is easy, Tony. Do you know what this armor means to wizards? Wang raised his right hand, and the streamlined black and white arm became transparent in his eyes in an instant. The magic veins were pulsating endlessly, like blood vessels and nerves. Magic was flowing in them, and then he slowly clenched his right fist. A portal opened behind him instantly, and orange-yellow sparks continued to pour out. Tony raised his eyebrows in surprise. Didn't you say that your magic disappeared? I didn't use my own magic, Wang said with a complicated expression. That's what this armor comes with. I didn't even use my own magic, Tony. At this point, Tony finally realized what he had created. He couldn't help but grin, revealing a very proud smile. It sounds like he and I created something amazing? Wang didn't answer this question. He clenched his fist again, feeling the special secondary magic pulse, and suddenly asked, "How many more of these armors have you created?" "Not much, but definitely not a small amount." Tony nodded to Wang. "At least enough for each of your Kamartage mages to have one." Wang took a deep breath and immersed himself in the armor. The special lines that constituted the magic veins allowed him to easily enjoy 100% control over the armor, without even having to issue orders to Jarvis like Tony. As he continued to go deeper, the hundreds of magics engraved inside the armor once again shocked him. There is no doubt that the armor developed by Shenyan and Tony has only one purpose: war. A total of 157 kinds of magic, from chain curses to powerful ultimate composite fireballs, to life-sharing and healing and purification spells to prevent sudden death. This armor is all-encompassing and has achieved the ultimate in combat. However, there is another point that shocked Wang. Did Shenyan foresee all this a long time ago? If Shenyan knew what Wang was thinking, he would answer like this: he is not a god, and it is impossible for him to have a plan without any omissions. Most of those who really have a plan without any omissions have died miserably, and those who can predict the future will no longer have all of anything. If you want to destroy them, you must first make them arrogant. At this moment, he was checking the core of the Great Barrier. After the portal to the Sanctum Sanctorum was cut off, he gave up the idea of going back to check. No need. Strange's vital signs were under his monitoring, very stable, except for the pain. He was very healthy. Coupled with the familiar magic flowing inside the Great Barrier, Shenyan could guess what he was doing with his toe. It was a very painful process to power the barrier without magic. Shenyan knew this, and that was why he chose to use the flying spell to check the core of the Great Barrier as soon as possible. The importance of this place, if explained by a metaphor, is the eye of the formation. The Great Barriers spread all over the world are all based on this place. And where is this place? The answer is actually very simple: the tomb of the Ancient One, located in a remote place deep in the Himalayas. This was the cemetery she chose at the last moment before her death after using the Time Stone to reverse the impact of the invasion of the dimensional demons. At that time, Shenyan and Strange really thought she was dead. Thinking of this, the mage couldn't help but reveal a mocking smile on his face. He patted Guyi's tombstone, and the rough stone felt the same as always. He had placed this tombstone here with his own hands. "Okay, teacher." Shenyan shrugged. "It seems that I have to dig up your grave. I hope you don't blame me." He moved his fingers, and the mental tentacles quickly dug up the frozen soil, revealing the coffin underneath. Of course, there was nothing in it. When Ancient One died, he left no body behind. The things placed in it actually had nothing to do with the cenotaph. The mental tentacles opened the lid of the coffin, and a lavender light soon shone on Shenyan's face. A rotating gem floated up, with complex patterns engraved on it. This gem is the core of the Great Barrier, and its name is the Dynamo's Stone. According to Ancient One's idea, magic power will be transported to this gem one by one through the Holy of Holies and the Kamartaj magic nodes around the world, and then through its special properties, it will be fed back and spread to the entire Earth, forming a barrier that can truly resist any external enemy. However, it has not been tested yet. This is even the only time it has been activated in all these years. Shenyan reached out and held the gem. The cold touch made him frown. This is not right. After absorbing too much magic power, the Dynamo's Stone will become extremely hot, not as cold as it is now, but the Great Barrier is indeed working. So, what went wrong? With a thought, he brought the gem to an altitude of 10,000 meters. His eyes gradually turned azure blue. Through this spell, he was able to glimpse a world that ordinary people could not observe. In this world, the sky is no longer just white clouds, but full of layers of meridians that are as complex as blood vessels. That is the proof of the existence of the Great Barrier. Now, magic power is flowing in it. This is one of the evidences that the Great Barrier has been activated, but Shenyan's expression has not improved. On the contrary, it is becoming more and more gloomy. He exhaled gently and shook his head. The Great Barrier does exist and has been activated, but it is not what it should be. It should be turned into a shield for the Earth to resist any enemy. But now, it has become a blade in the hands of the perpetrator. The existence of the barrier has been fundamentally changed. It no longer uses the Dynamo's Stone left by the Ancient One as its core. All the magic power and channels have been changed. They have become a barrier to block the Earth. Now, no one can leave here. A death arena? The wizard slowly smiled. Very good. Chapter 635, First Day, Deprivation of Light. Since you want war, I will give you war. The wizard threw the Dynamo's Stone from a height of 10,000 meters, and it was swallowed by a dimension portal that suddenly opened on its way down. Zisong's voice came from it, with confusion and pain. Why did you throw things at me? Shenyan got into it coldly, without any intention of joking. Do you know this thing? Zisong was still the same, sitting on his throne, lazily, like a wriggling maggot. Hearing this, he picked up the Dynamo's Stone and took a look at it in an unpleasant manner. You know it. It's the ashes of the Ancient One. Hey, it's just a joke. Don't look at me like that. The Dynamo's Stone, I know, it's good that you know it. Keep it safe. Zythorn, when was the Great Barrier changed? You ask me? Zythorn widened his eyes exaggeratedly. The only dark god book that can observe the outside world for me has just returned to Earth recently. You threw my TV into outer space, and a bunch of weird-looking aliens sold my books. You ask me now? Don't pretend. Do you think I'm strange? What you said is not very friendly to your junior brother. Shenyan glanced at him with a smile. If you are friendly to him again, I will be unfriendly to you. Zythorn shrank his neck and sighed. Okay, I knew you would find me. After all, apart from the unlucky old Zythorn, which other demon will deal with you again? He stood up from the throne. His expression had become serious. His long white hair fluttered behind his head, and his red robe fluttered, overlapping with his throne of the same color. Listen carefully. Zisuoan spoke solemnly. You are about to face an unprecedented test. This war is yours alone, and no one can help you. If you win, the Earth will survive, and if you lose, everything will end. Nothing will survive in this dimension anymore. Your friends, everyone you know, those familiar faces, they will all disappear. In the end, there will be nothing left here. Who am I going to fight? Shenyan asked calmly. Zisuoan looked at him, and a smile slowly appeared on his face. I have predicted this moment since a long time ago. You may not realize it yet, but for lives like us, time is just like sand in the palm of your hand. If you throw it casually, countless time will slip away. Some things are destined from the beginning, such as your reform of the magic world, so that those dimensional demons can no longer collect magic power from mortals in this world. You make it impossible for them to lend money at high interest rates. Zisong blinked his eyes comically. Delaying others from making money is the revenge for killing your father. Then I will kill their mothers as well. Zisong almost laughed out loud, but he still maintained his last self-esteem as a gray demon shadow. After coughing twice, he returned to his serious expression. In short, you are now facing not only a group of angels from outside our world, but also dimensional demons who are eyeing you covetously. Last time, the Ancient One sacrificed her. This time, you can only rely on yourself. It sounds like you know a lot. Yes, they invited me to join. Zisong smiled slightly. But I refused. Dear, you must have a supporter, and who else can be this person except your old friend Zisong? He chattered on. Legend has it that God took 7 days to create the world. How long do you think it will take for angels and gods to destroy the world? Here's a little hint. Zisong raised a finger. On the first day, the world will be deprived of light, magic. Shenyan spat out 2 cold words. For mages, magic is light. You are right, but unfortunately I can't give you a reward. And old Zisong probably knows that you don't want his hug. Zisong showed a pitiful expression and raised his second finger. The next day, Shenyan interrupted him. The sky will bring disaster, right? The book of Genesis says that God created the firmament and separated the water from the water, and he called the firmament the sky. Have you really read that old book? Zisong raised his eyebrows in surprise. But it doesn't matter. I don't know whether the world was created by God. I have never seen him. But if those people who united to make trouble for you want to destroy the world, he grinned. It won't take 7 days. Yeah, I think so too. Shenyan also laughed. It's unlikely that they will really take 7 days to achieve this plan step by step. I guess they only want me. You are right again, my friend. There is still no reward this time, but I can give you another hint. Zisong sat back in his chair, his 10 fingers colliding with each other to form a spire. He looked at Shenyan intently with a serious expression. They will deprive you of everything little by little until you beg for mercy, until you become one of them. We will wait and see. The wizard said the last sentence calmly and left here. Scythoan was wandering alone in his dark dimension. There was nothing here, only nothingness and himself. Compared to a world that he could dominate, this place was more like a prison. But Scythoan didn't seem to care. He smiled slightly and played with the dynamo stone in his hand. He knocked on the armrest of the throne casually and said, "If you have anything to say, it would be better to come out and say it." Hiding in the dark. Are you the god of thieves? A cold snort came from the darkness, and a huge shadow emerged from the darkness. He was even deeper than the pure darkness of Scythoan. You didn't convince him, just like you didn't convince me. He has no chance of winning. You are sending him to death. The shadow said firmly. If he really has no chance of winning, why did you ask me to persuade him to surrender? Scythoan smiled again. I advise you to take care of yourself. The main body cannot descend, and the strength of a single universe alone is no threat to him. Old friends. Moreover, as far as I know, it seems that many people are unwilling to stand on your side, right? There are still many favors left by Ancient One. If we win, Zithorn, you will be swallowed up along with this pathetic world. Let's talk about it after we win. Who can't make a harsh statement? Zithorn lazily propped up his cheek, tilted his head, and showed a rather sarcastic smile to the huge shadow. Those who hide their heads and show their tails have no chance of winning. Chapter 636 Skilled. After leaving the dark dimension, the first thing Shenyan did was not to inform Strange that he didn't need to power the Great Barrier anymore. The reason why the wizard didn't do this was because he still needed the Great Barrier. Yes, it is no longer a shield to protect the earth, but Shenyan now needs the earth to become a death battlefield. He closed his eyes, his black robe fluttered, and his mental tentacles covered the entire earth in an instant. Tony waved his hands and released a compound fireball in his home's large basement with a slightly clumsy look. The crimson fireball with a radius of 7 meters hit the ground, first exploding, and then the high temperature turned the debris of the floor into boiling magma. Seeing this scene, he couldn't help but smack his tongue. Is this magic? Tony tilted his neck and looked at the ring on his right middle finger. If I had known it was so convenient, I would have learned it too. Maintain the most basic respect for magic, Tony. Wang persuaded him seriously. This is a profound art. You may be proficient in combat, But his words were interrupted by a loud noise. Kara, wearing the same armor as theirs, crashed headfirst into the ceiling of the basement at a very high speed. Dust fell down, and her dull voice came from above. "Mr. Wang, how do I cancel this acceleration spell?" "You just need to think about it," Wang said weakly. Kara did as she was told, and soon floated down from the air. Her Kryptonian physique with this suit of armor is undoubtedly a tiger with wings if she doesn't use the super brain like her cousin. At present, it seems that Kara is still in the first stage of using the super brain, that is, not using it at all. The Kryptonian girl smiled awkwardly and apologized to Tony repeatedly. Sorry, Mr. Tony, I didn't mean to break the ceiling. It's a small matter. I often break things here." Tony smiled freely and pointed to the ceiling, where the nanomachines had begun to slowly repair it. "As long as you don't destroy everything here in an instant, it will always be able to repair itself." "Is it so magical?" Kara covered her mouth in surprise. She was always like this, curious about everything. "How did you do it?" "God. Are you a genius? I really want to know who is smarter between you and Batman." "Ah, of course I'm a genius." Tony first puffed out his chest, smiled proudly, and then asked immediately, "Who is Batman?" "A person who has many new inventions like you, and he also has many armors. I've seen a set of all black ones, which looks like the knight armor in the game. So handsome, but they never let me touch it." Wang looked at the two children, one big and one small, who started discussing the color matching of the armor with a headache, and said nothing, until the information contained in a mental tentacle was transmitted to his mind. Wang's expression immediately changed. "Los Angeles, Tony." Wang clenched his fists, and a portal lit up behind him. "There is an invasion." "Wait, hey, what did you say? How did you know?" Wang did not answer him, but pointed to the sky. He's back." Tony was stunned, watching Wang being swallowed by the portal, with a puzzled expression. "What? Damn, can't you say 2 more words? Are all you mages such riddlers?" "Almost." "Tony, don't discuss whether we are riddlers there. Leave the basement, and go with Kara. There is a dimensional portal that has just been opened on New York's 4th Avenue. Go quickly." Shenyan's mental tentacles contained information and transmitted it to his mind. This novel way of talking, which was different from the communication channel, made him stunned, but Tony quickly accepted it. He also opened a portal to New York's 5th Avenue in a very realistic way. His magic talent was visible to the naked eye. Looking at the chaotic scene behind the door, Tony asked, "Then what? What should I do next?" Mr. Tony, who are you talking to?" Kara looked at him puzzled. "No need to say it out loud. Just think about it." Shenyan told him simply and clearly. "That door is expected to transport more than 3,000 shadow beasts to New York within 10 minutes. Use the 37th spell of the 5th sequence built into your armor, which can kill them with the highest efficiency. In addition, let Jarvis prepare and mobilize all the available armor. I have notified the old guys and they are on their way." Tony smiled and waved to Kara. Fighting side by side. "I miss the old days," he thought to himself. In Shenyan's calculation, Tony and Kara's efficiency in dealing with shadow beasts should just be equal to that of Wang. It's not that he underestimated the combat power of Kryptonians, but the efficiency of a skilled wizard in dealing with dimensional invasion events is incomparable to those outside the magic world like them. Facts have proved that his calculations are correct. Los Angeles, on the famous Hollywood Walk of Fame, Wang, who was wearing a full set of armor and could not hide his strong body, stepped out of the portal, and the fleeing people saluted him one after another. Many people thought that this guy was a staff member who came to attend the premiere of a science fiction movie, and kindly reminded him that there was a monster invasion ahead. Wang just nodded at them. He clenched his fists, and his magic veins began to stir, and the familiar feeling came back. The smooth casting made him smile. Sometimes, you can only feel the preciousness of something after losing it once. Wang couldn't help laughing out loud. A capsized, black monster came out from the ground and pounced on him. However, it was cut into pieces by 2 light blades in midair. The magic veins behind him suddenly lit up, and the dark blue light flowed through the magic veins of his body. The acceleration mode was instantly activated. At the same time, the physical strengthening spell, Titan Power, was also used on himself. Wang jumped up and reached a distance of hundreds of meters in half a second. The physical fitness obtained by the superposition of the acceleration mode and the Titan power even allowed him to cast another spell in midair, a notorious spell of great destructive power, but it was just right for these monsters. Bang! With a loud landing sound, a fierce blue flame suddenly bloomed with Wang as the center. A huge flame frenzy ignited on the Avenue of Stars. This attack achieved quite a good result. The monsters that kept pouring out of the dimension portal were almost cleared by 1/3 in a moment, but Wang was still not satisfied. As I said, he was an experienced wizard who had dealt with many dimensional invasions. Because of this, Wang knew very well the necessity of killing them all. The magic veins continued to jump, and the deep blue light began to flicker like breathing. Wang placed his hands on the ground and showed a bloody smile on his face. There will be another update later. I will go down to do a nucleic acid test and have dinner. Chapter 637, Well-trained and accidentally injuring friendly forces. For Wang, killing has almost become an instinct. He is 48 years old. He entered Camartage at the age of 14 and dealt with the first cult sacrifice in his life at the age of 18. For the mages of Camartage, there is no such thing as a simple researcher or academic. One of their duties is to kill. And there is one most important point: efficiency. Just like now, with a thought, his body under the blessing of speed mode burst out with tyrannical power. The index finger and ring finger of his left hand bent, and the magic veins instantly completed the task of transmitting magic power, and the engraved spell was released instantly. The figure in black and white armor flashed and appeared in the air, like a ghost. The next second, chain lightning broke out between the monster groups. To deal with these flesh and blood creatures, fire and thunder are always the best means. It is powerful and effective quickly. The more important point is that the aftermath of the spell can often cover up what Wang is going to do next. He put his hands together, and the tentacles of his spiritual power pulled the lightning that had not yet completely dissipated, making them dive into the ground as if they had self-awareness. The magic power continued to be transmitted, and the nature of the lightning was completely changed by him in the next second. The corners of Wang's mouth curled up slightly. He had loved this trick for a long time. The ground bulged, and the monsters roared uneasy. They stepped on the scattered and broken bodies of their companions and rushed towards Wang, but they couldn't touch him at all. The tentacles of his spiritual power slapped them back to the ground one by one, and a huge lavender magic circle appeared around them, covering the entire Avenue of Stars. Wang took a deep breath, opened his palms, and then closed them again. The light movement created an indescribable horror scene. The lavender magic circle was activated in an instant, and the gravity of that area was increased in a short moment to a point that the monsters could not bear at all. The bones made strange sounds, followed by the internal organs and flesh. Crimson mist bloomed above the Avenue of Stars, and the asphalt road cracked inch by inch, and blood paved in it, making the cracks take on a bright red color, which looked very strange. However, this was not the final result. Wang clenched his teeth, and he could feel a familiar tremor in his lungs. This situation would occur every time he tried to change the type of magic circle. Shenyan once said that this was a rejection reaction. His internal organs had not been completely cleansed and alienated by the magic power. This instantaneous change made him feel very stressed. But sometimes, stress can make people feel happy. Like now, his teeth chattered, but a hideous smile appeared on his face. The closed palms were firmly pressed together, without a trace of trembling. The magic circle made a humming sound, and the monsters and the corpses of their companions were completely compressed into mist like powder in an instant, exploding in the air and slowly blown away by the breeze. It took a total of 3 minutes. Wang slowly landed, and in a few breaths, he recovered again. At the same time, Shenyan's spiritual power message also reached his mind. "I'm glad to see that you haven't regressed, old Wang." "I'm not so old that I can't fight," Wang said angrily, using authentic Shandong dialect. "Do you think I'm a senior in the sanatorium? Ha! Get ready. I'm going to close the dimensional portal." "You haven't forgotten our old tradition, have you?" "Of course." A smile appeared on Wang's face, and a light blue magic mist spread out 5 meters around him. The extremely pure magic outlined a complex magic circle in the air, floating above his head, and the dimensional portal that was still trembling slightly began to slowly close. At the same time, Wang's hands closed again. Kamartage mages have an unwritten tradition. When they deal with a series of events involving dimensional invaders, they often give the other party a big gift when they close the portal at the end. For example, a compound chain magic bomb, such as a superposition magic mixed with elemental reactions. In short, it is impolite not to return the favor. Shenyan's slightly surprised voice reached his ears. Changed. Old Wang, why don't you use your favorite destruction storm this time? Wang, who was struggling to mobilize the armor spell on the spot, manipulated the thunder and fire spells to form a trigger trap, rolled his eyes. There was something he was too lazy to say. Do you think I can still be used? That thing is a forbidden spell. Compared with Wang's ease and even the speed of solving the Los Angeles invasion within 3 minutes, Tony and Kara were much inferior. It's better to say that they are causing trouble for each other. For example, now, Tony finally called out a chain lightning chain from the armor spell list, which looked very powerful. He spent a minute mobilizing magic power and let them flow naturally into the core of the pattern array. As a result, before he could release the spell he had prepared for half a day, a large group of shadow beasts in front of him were burned into slag by Kara's thermal vision when she flew over. Thank you. His insincere thanks were taken as the truth by the Kryptonian girl, who even said you're welcome cheerfully in the communication channel. Tony's expression darkened, but he didn't say anything. He turned around and released the prepared chain lightning chain to the group of shadow beasts behind him. The problem was that Kara had just flown there. With a cry of pain, the armored Kryptonian girl was wrapped in lightning and was lifted into the air by the electricity. She screamed and crashed into an unlucky car. Tony looked closely and found that the car was still a flying car produced by his family. Write down the license plate number, Jarvis, and send a compensation to the owner. Tony issued orders to Jarvis weekly. His armor was specially made, and naturally there was Jarvis's eye system inside. Okay, sir. In addition, according to the calculation results, you should now use the firestorm marked in sequence 3 to face this kind of grouped and extremely fast enemies. Firestorm? It sounds powerful. Do you have any other recommendations? Yes, sir. Sequence 7. There is a column of flesh curse in the curse spell. You need to spend 5 minutes to let the armor analyze the flesh and blood composition of the shadow beasts, and then you can directly kill them all with the flesh curse. 5 minutes? It sounds like a good suggestion. Okay, then this one. Coincidentally, Kara also flew back at this time. She said to Tony with a little annoyance, Mr. Tony, did you accidentally hurt your friends just now? Tony smiled awkwardly. It is foreseeable that the cooperation between these two people will not be very pleasant. A fledgling Kryptonian, an arrogant man who has just started to experience magic. After checking their status through his mental tentacles, Shenyan almost sighed. If he was not dealing with the overwhelming alien creatures on the African land, he would have opened a portal to deal with them for them. Damn, I finished writing it yesterday but forgot to post it. Luckily, my phone has a cloud service, so I uploaded this chapter from my phone. I don't know if there will be any problems with the layout. If there are any, please leave a message to let me know. Chapter 638 Zombies. Africa is the main battlefield. That's right, this vast land with many plains and sparse population was chosen as the main attack point. Shenyan will not thank those behind the scenes for this. They are not so kind and even worry about the safety of ordinary people in the dimensional invasion. Floating over Africa, a full 5-dimensional portals were opened here. There was no sacrifice, nor any suspicious summoning array. They appeared out of thin air. This is two completely different concepts from the former. Sacrifice and summoning array themselves are internal behavior, and the world barrier can't do anything about it. This is the choice of the humans in this world. Even if they open more dimensional portals, the world barrier can't do anything. But if the invasion comes from outside the world barrier, it will teach the invaders what is indestructible. Unfortunately, the current situation is difficult to explain with Shenyan's theory. He doesn't know why these 5-dimensional portals appeared abruptly, and there is not even a trace to trace. You know, there are traces of the invasion of New York and Los Angeles. One of the two damn portals was a trace left by a Hollywood cult activity in 1987, which is why it was opened on the Avenue of Stars. The other New York portal was left behind in the 19th century when New York had not yet become a steel jungle. There are traces of these, and Shenyan has even notified the mages of Kamartaj through his mental tentacles to deal with them. Although they have lost their magic, they have the support of Tony and the new armor he made, and Wang's team, so it is not a problem to deal with some small traces. Let's get back to the topic. At this moment, 5 huge faces are floating in the sky above Africa. They are sad, angry, desperate, or gloomy, but one of them is full of calm. These 5 huge faces are like dark clouds, firmly covering the sun and projecting their own marks on the land of Africa. Fortunately, this land is not completely defenseless. The huge artillery with a low-key black appearance moved on its own, and they appeared from the lavender barrier in an overwhelming manner. A man wearing black vibranium armor and a helmet shaped like a cheetah was standing quietly in front of them. He slowly raised his right hand, and the muzzles of thousands of artillery began to emit a low hum. As long as the man waved his right hand, they would immediately fire. But he didn't do that, because another man came in front of him. "Hello, T'Challa." Shenyan's greeting did not get a response from T'Challa. His serious eyes seemed to penetrate the helmet and firmly nailed to the wizard's face. He didn't care, but just raised his eyebrows lightly. "You still did it." T'Challa's helmet slowly disappeared, and the vibranium left his face peacefully. A face made of pure metal was revealed. This is a tragedy. The cause and effect can be described later. But now in Wakanda, only T'Challa exists. He is a king without citizens, an elder brother without sisters, a son without a father, and a husband without a wife. T'Challa didn't need to open his mouth. The metal synth voice came out freely from his voice box. "If I don't do this, I can't survive." "You are now only half a leg and one lung in a living state, T'Challa. The horrible weapons released by those aliens forced me to do this." T'Challa replied calmly with his metal synth voice. "I didn't inform you because I knew you would never agree to me turning myself into this, but I don't care anymore. Flesh and blood can't protect them. Maybe metal can protect the remaining land of Wakanda." Shenyan didn't argue with him. What else could he say? This respectable king resolutely exposed Wakanda to the world for all mankind in a certain alien invasion war. He knew that if the nest is overturned, no eggs will be left intact. Unfortunately, because his country was too dazzling in the war, the aliens who had been completely extinct and even their names no longer existed dropped an extremely special virus bomb on Wakanda. This thing instantly turned 70% of the Wakandans into moving corpses, with pus from flesh and blood all over their bodies. This hell on earth lasted for 3 days. When T'Challa led his army back to Wakanda, the only witnesses of their glory were the bones of their families and the virus that was still spreading. "This is a dimensional invasion, T'Challa," Shenyan began to explain to him in detail. T'Challa was worthy of his respect. "Those 5 faces are 5 portals. There will be no problem with my calculations, so in 3 minutes, they will merge into one, forming a huge hole. From that hole, unimaginable monsters will pour out." "What kind?" T'Challa asked calmly. "Your weapons are enough to deal with the first wave." Shenyan glanced at the self-propelled artillery. "But I don't know what the second wave will be." "Listen, T'Challa, this is an unprecedented invasion, and the driving force behind it is a group of foreign angels, and there are dimensional demons who have long wanted our lives, so what?" Vibranium covered his bloodless and tearless metal face again, and Shenyan seemed to hear a very slight sigh. Then, Black Panther said, "It's always like this. The earth is always full of disasters. Everyone wants to get a piece of us, but we never give in, isn't it?" He stepped forward and began to wait patiently like a cheetah waiting for prey to pass by the grass. The artillery made an increasingly dangerous hum. 3 minutes later, just as Shenyan calculated, the 5 terrifying faces gradually merged together. Sadness, anger, despair, gloom, and calmness mixed together, and a huge pure black hole appeared in the sky. Ordinary people are not even qualified to look at it. It is the hole in the world. Shenyan's expression gradually became solemn. Did he make a mistake in his calculation? No, It wouldn't. But the monster didn't emerge from the hole. Generally speaking, waiting is not a good sign. After another 43 seconds, T'Challa's raised hand suddenly dropped. Shenyan's pupils also dilated. In the overwhelming artillery volley, a green monster that fell into the hole was shrouded in destructive energy. Damn it! Shenyan gritted his teeth, and T'Challa also looked back at him. Both of them realized something at that moment. What is that green thing? What else could it be? A deafening roar sounded on the African land, followed by an indistinct roar. Hulk, hungry. The huge green figure broke through the smoke and rushed towards Shenyan and T'Challa. Black Panther immediately raised his arm, and thousands of self-propelled artillery were immediately linked together by magnetic force, and they began to transform rapidly. Before the green monster approached them, it formed a huge robot. Shenyan didn't look at the giant robot that seemed to be a young man's dream come true. His eyes were fixed on the Hulk running towards him, and his palms were slowly clenched. He stared at the dozens of skulls hanging on Hulk's chest, at Hulk's unconsciousness, with only cruel green eyes, at Hulk's wide-open mouth and those sharp yellow teeth. A feeling of nausea surged in his heart. Shenyan knew that it was not the Bruce Banner he knew. The mental tentacles had completely mastered the memories in the monster's mind. It came from a desperate world, a ridiculous world full of zombie viruses. There, all the heroes became man-eating monsters, and among the monsters, there was one who was the most powerful. There was no time to waste time with Hulk. The wizard took a step forward, and the world suddenly changed. Even T'Challa's already scarce humanity was startled, and he suddenly felt a pressure coming from behind. Turning around, he did not see the wizard's figure, but saw a slowly rising platinum sun. Is it an illusion? How could his high-definition data collector have such an error? A question flashed through T'Challa's mind, but before he could ask it, the violent temperature swept over his body. The earth was shattered, the sky changed color, and the Hulk, who was clamped by the giant robot, was burned into a melted wax figure in an instant. Even with its unreasonable defense, it could not survive such pure violence. But Shenyan did not stop. The platinum sun appeared again, the second time, and the third time. He did not stop until Hulk did not even have a cell. The air was filled with a special smell, and the traces left after the psychic energy overflowed made the air here full of magnificent scenes. T'Challa stared at the scenery in front of him, and his mechanical eyes actually saw several familiar faces waving at him from the colorful illusion. His father, his wife, his sister. How could this be possible? T'Challa wanted to ask something, but a golden figure passed by him and T'Challa was lifted upside down. His right leg was violently dismantled, and then his body was thrown aside like garbage. Black Panther raised his head calmly and looked at a pale man wearing golden armor and a blue cape, who was holding the remaining half of his right leg and gnawing on it. He ate with relish. He ate very quickly, but he threw away T'Challa's right leg bone in a flash. Then, he looked at Shenyan. A smile without any humanity, only animality, slowly bloomed on the pale face. Ah, fresh flesh and blood. As the first complete food, I will eat you very slowly. I will start from your neck. He couldn't finish his words. With incomparable rage, Shenyan, who had already known how many people this beast had eaten through his mental tentacles, descended from the sky with psychic energy, and the white gold flame became colder. An iron fist burning with anger instantly pierced the chest of this thing and grasped his spine. Shenyan grinned and pulled out. Puff. The smelly black blood was burned clean by the white gold flame before it could flow out. The mage held a broken spine in his hand. He looked at the thing with a stunned expression and shook his head slowly. Sentinel, Robert Reynolds, you deserve to die. The sentinel who lost his spine twisted his upper body, wriggling like a maggot. A smile appeared on his pale face again. He didn't seem to worry about his lost spine at all. The golden flame suddenly burned in his empty eyes. His long hair, which had turned pale, was ignited again. In an instant, the man standing opposite the mage no longer looked like a man-eating monster, but a god. You are strong. I have eaten so many heroes, villains, and damn aliens, and you are the only one who can hurt me. The sentinel tilted his head and showed Shenyan a brilliant smile. But it doesn't matter. You will understand why I became like this and why everyone is driven by hunger. Just let me bite you. Everything will be solved. He roared and rushed towards the wizard. His speed was even incalculable. The terrifying power exploded in his mutated body, carrying kinetic energy almost equivalent to the explosion of the earth. He bit hard on the left hand of the motionless wizard. Shenyan looked at him calmly and even deliberately removed the protective magic circle on his hand. He allowed the sentinel's teeth to touch his arm. Although he had seen how terrible this virus was from the memories of the sentinel and Hulk, he was still not worried that it would corrupt him. Is it arrogance? No, it is absolute confidence. 1 second passed, 2 seconds passed. The sentry's expression gradually became dull. He didn't understand why the man who had been bitten by him and whose flesh and blood flew everywhere showed no reaction. He showed neither hunger nor the pain of reason and appetite fighting for sanity. There was only calmness, a calmness that made his broken spine tremble. Do you think this thing can be useful to me? Shenyan smiled calmly and stretched out his right hand. Die. Chapter 639 Fake Key. 2 seconds after his head was pinched by one hand, the sentinel's mind was gradually filled with some kind of emotion. He was sure that he had bitten this man. The touch of teeth would not lie, nor would a splash of blood and flesh. However, the man standing in front of him was unmoved as if nothing had happened. It was as if the terrible virus that infected everyone in his world was nothing. How is this possible? He opened his mouth wide, and a trace of cold air trembled between his teeth. In his world, the sentinel had seen countless people who thought they could resist the virus with willpower. However, no matter who it was, as long as they were bitten, the hunger that climbed up from the depths of the bone marrow would destroy everything. Spider-Man returned home when the virus broke out, and his aunt and wife were there at that time. What happened next can be imagined. Ant-Man imprisoned his friend Black Panther in the basement, taking only a little at a time. Hulk got the most, and there was a little trick. He could enjoy it a second time when he turned back into Banner. Hulk always had some left over for Banner. Even Thor was not immune. They ate up all the food on Earth within a year, and then went to the universe. It's not that no one thought that this couldn't go on, but they couldn't think normally when they were hungry. Only when they had eaten enough meat could their brains have the thinking ability of normal people. Spider-Man tried to kill himself more than once when he was awake, but he failed every time. The mental tentacles completely transmitted the thoughts and ideas in the sentinel's mind to Shenyan. The wizard looked at his bitten left hand, and the wound was rotting rapidly. The two opposite forces of life and death were constantly fighting there, which was very painful and extremely refreshing. Nothing is impossible, Mr. Sentinel. I haven't seen you in my world, but I have seen someone who looks like you. He clenched his right hand, and the sentinel's head turned into rotten and smelly powder in an instant. The magic power penetrated directly into his body, opening a dimensional door that existed in the sentinel's body. The power of the explosion of millions of stars poured into his dry body at that moment. The head that disappeared came back again, and his rotten body was quickly becoming healthy. The virus had no power to fight back and was burned clean by his own power. The dazed Robert Reynolds raised his hands and stared at them tremblingly. For decades, as if for the first time in his life, the feeling of hunger was far away from the Sentinel. That person is Captain Marvel. She is as stupid as you, and she also doesn't know what kind of treasure is buried in her body. But you are more stupid than her. At least, Carol has never eaten people. A pale and slender hand pierced his chest and squeezed a still beating heart into an exploding blood mist. The Sentinel's face, which was healthy just now, was rapidly declining, but he did not think about resisting, but just smiled bitterly. So, in fact, I have always been able to resist that feeling? Don't think too much, Reynolds. Die, Shenyan said softly, and then used the power of the explosion of millions of stars to erase the existence of the Sentinel itself. He slowly returned to the ground, with a new power in his eyes. He did the same thing to the Sentinel as he did to Captain Marvel, but he was not happy about it. The power of millions of exploding stars surged through his body, more obedient than magic, and in just a few seconds, it enhanced the wizard's physical fitness to the same level as Superman. But does it matter? Shenyan looked up and stared at the hole in the sky that had not yet dissipated. T'Challa limped to his side, bleeding from his broken leg. What is that? Have you seen horror movies in the 1980s? T'Challa? Zombie movies. Even though T'Challa had completely abandoned flesh and blood and became a complete mechanical body, He was shocked by this answer for a while. Zombies really exist? They didn't exist before today, T'Challa. But you just saw a zombie version of the Hulk, so we'd better make an assumption that there really is such a world and we all become zombies. I hope you don't exist in that world. I hope so too, Shenyan said softly. The king stood up with a frown on his face, a rag still wrapped around his wrist. It might be hard to imagine, but this rag is indeed the culprit of the Starlight Avenue dimensional portal. On it is engraved the crimson summoning spell to summon Cyttorak. The source has been found, but he does not seem to be relieved. The monsters that the king killed here have nothing to do with Cyttorak. They are the infamous Dog Bull, a special creature that can be summoned by anyone as long as they are given magic power. They are extremely greedy for flesh and blood and have crazy aggressiveness. What the hell? With deep doubts, he stared at the rag on his wrist. The scarlet cloth was tattered, and occasionally there was a stream of light flashing. The characters engraved on it were dotted and looked like broken stars. Did Cyttorak have anything to do with this? The king was not sure. He had dealt with Cyttorak and his followers many times. After being expelled from the earth, the Crimson Devil had always wanted to return here, but he never really succeeded. Over time, his intentions changed, from returning to Earth to dominate here again to simply destroying it. It felt like love that could not be obtained. Unfortunately, if Cyttorak was really just a man crazy about love, this matter would be easy to deal with. But the problem is that he is basically a god, and a crazy god with deep malice towards the Earth. In the past few centuries, he and his agents have been stirring up trouble on Earth, just thinking about completely destroying this place. Thinking of this, Wang felt that it was not impossible for Cyttorak to have nothing to do with this matter. He carefully wrapped the crimson rag with 12 sealing spells, and then summoned a Kamar-Taj instructor wearing Tony's new armor. The other party was named Rajiv, a Frenchman, but his character was not frivolous, but extremely serious. "What is it, King? I need you to do me a favor, Rajiv." Rajiv nodded solemnly. The king stroked the rag on his wrist and continued to add sealing charms. He said with a serious expression, "Remember the spell we used to sneak into the Holy of Holies to read books?" "You mean the fake key?" "Yes, that's it," Rajiv asked sharply. "The door of the Holy of Holies is still closed to us, so you need this spell to enter the Holy of Holies?" "Actually, it's more than that." The king rubbed his eyebrows with a headache. "It's not just as simple as closing it. I can't even contact the Holy of Holies. It's as if it has been completely sealed. But no matter what, things related to Cyttorak must be handed over there." "I understand." Rajiv nodded. "There is one more update." "It's a bit late. Sorry." 10,000 updates tomorrow. Chapter 640 Mechanical Ascension. Although Rajiv agreed to help, the current situation did not allow them to simply spend more than 10 minutes to create a fake key to pass through the gate of the Holy of Holies and enter the Holy of Holies as before. All the magic of the mages has been taken away, and they now rely entirely on the armor on their bodies to cast spells. In other words, if they want to release the fake key again, they have to invent this spell from scratch again. This is not a small project. Generally speaking, those who are qualified to enter the Holy of Holies, in addition to those recognized by the Supreme Mage, are senior lecturers of Kamar-Taj. The principle of the fake key is actually very simple, which is to simulate one of the two identities and force the gate to open for them to enter. However, it is easy to say but difficult to do. Wang frowned and began to simulate the reaction with magic. Everyone's magic reaction is different, and each has its own special fluctuation, which means that he may have to try thousands of times before he has a chance to find the fluctuation that can pass through the gate of the Holy of Holies and enter it. Rajiv was not much different. The two of them were squatting beside the dilapidated road without any image of a wizard. If you ignore the magic power surging in their hands and the armor on their bodies, they might be mistaken for homeless vagrants. T'Challa was installing a high-tech prosthesis for himself. He was not inferior to Tony in invention and creation, and he had made progress in the years he lived alone in Wakanda. At least no one on Earth was crazy enough to replace his flesh and blood with his steel body. After losing his right leg, T'Challa's human content was only one lung. It was hard to say whether he was a human or a machine. But Shenyan didn't care. T'Challa's soul was still beating in his mechanical body. This was a fact that existed and could not be eliminated. After the installation was completed, with a slight click, his right leg buckled at the knee. The flowing metal quickly covered the surface of the calf, and soon it seemed to have existed on T'Challa's body. Black Panther stood up straight, looked up at the portal in the air, and remained silent. His artificial eye can even be used as an aerial telescope, not to mention this level of magnification. In his field of vision, something was wriggling in the hole in the sky. The dense malice even made his mechanical brain begin to tremble. The emotional processing unit issued a warning to him. T'Challa had to block the simulated emotions and return to a bloodless and tearless machine again. He asked, "That's it? It won't produce new monsters anymore?" "Of course." "Impossible," Shenyan replied. "It is gathering strength, T'Challa, waiting for a point where we are all relaxed. In fact, the magic reaction from the hole is becoming more and more intensive." "I can't see magic," T'Challa said frankly. "That's not within the capture range of the mechanical eye." When he talked about the mechanical eye, the wizard became interested. "Waiting is a long and boring process. In order to pass the time, he has begun to study how strong his physical fitness has increased dramatically." At this time, T'Challa's words made him smile slightly. "What did you install on yourself, T'Challa?" "Mechanical eyes, artificial spine. I made a skeleton with vibranium." T'Challa tapped his chest, and nanometal flowed to one side like water, revealing his metal ribs. The scene was horrifying, but the two people present didn't care. "Then there are all kinds of organs. In fact, they are just for show, such as this metal heart. Although it is still beating, it actually has no blood-forming function. There are no blood vessels in my body, only energy transport channels. The role of the heart is just a processor." The metal finger moved down, and T'Challa's tone did not fluctuate at all. "Then there is my only remaining lung. I no longer need to breathe, and I keep it just as a memorial. It is still very healthy, and I sometimes consider whether to donate it." "What about your brain?" "I used the Ultron technology that Tony and Banner had studied before to upload my own personality and memory completely to the computer. I completed this work before my original brain was dissolved by the virus bomb." T'Challa's metal face showed a smile, and the steel squirmed, not very friendly, but very terrifying. "In a sense, I am just an eye now, but your soul is still in the body, my friend." Shenyan stared at him deeply, without speaking, but made a gesture to indicate that he should continue. T'Challa continued to introduce his new body. "However, mechanization is not without its benefits. I can simulate all kinds of emotions in the past through my mechanical brain. If I want, I can still be very emotional. Unfortunately, I am the only one in Wakanda now, and even emotion is meaningless. Now, my full running speed can match Tony's maximum flying speed. I can resist all human weapons except nuclear bombs. I can survive under the deep sea of 10,000 meters, and I can survive in space for more than 4 months without any oxygen. If there is sunlight, it can last longer." "Are you solar-powered?" "Sometimes." T'Challa suddenly told a cold joke. "Most of the time I am driven by pure energy. I can show you how to drink oil when I have time. I have tried it myself. I can use most of the energy on the earth." In other words, the kinetic energy generated by your running can also be absorbed by yourself. Not low efficiency. "Perpetual motion machine?" The wizard spread his hands. "You really are mechanical ascension, T'Challa. Some people I know would love to meet you." "No, maybe they worship you." "Worship me? They might even think you are an incarnation of Messiah, T'Challa." Shenyan didn't say this out loud. It was a bit troublesome to explain what Messiah was, and the current situation did not allow them to continue the conversation. The wizard raised his head and flew for the first time without relying on magic, but with his body. The power of the Sentinel has made him completely surpass humans, and this unexpected surprise made him a little curious. Flying with magic and flying with a body are two completely different concepts, and it is difficult for him to say which one is better. However, they have one thing in common: he flies to kill. The echo of wailing began to be heard in the void, and a deep fear that has been rooted in the hearts of humans since ancient times began to spread in the sky of Africa. A huge crimson beast poked its head out of the void. Shenyan sighed. "Sidorak, You son of a bitch. Let me tell you why I haven't been updating very well recently. This week I was busy with the work of being an auxiliary police officer in the detention center. My family had connections. It was a sure thing. But I failed the political review. It was all gone. Alas, I am such a poor guy. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 641, Determination to Become a Monster. It's him again. It's him again. It's always him. Cyttorak is the one who is most obsessed with the earth among the dimensional demons, and he can be regarded as the most persistent one. Although others also want to come to Earth to share a piece of the pie, they don't go back and forth like him and stay here. Shenyan and a group of Kamartaj mages are almost physically uncomfortable with him. They can encounter this red bastard every time there is a dimensional invasion. Not only is he difficult to deal with, but he always likes to be smart and play some tricks that he thinks are profound. The crimson behemoth that just poked its head out has a huge, hideous head, and the part that sticks out from the black hole alone is a full 200 meters long. It looks terrifying, but Shenyan is too lazy to talk nonsense with it. He doesn't want this thing to come out of the black hole completely. He clenched his right fist and punched it. A terrifying sonic boom sounded. Standing on the ground, Kala almost fell to the ground. His electronic eyes could not catch the figure of the wizard, and what was even more terrifying was that a long white air force was hit in the sky. Then, he heard the wailing of the giant beast, and the blood that covered the sky like raindrops. Shenyan turned around and stayed in the air, looking at the result of this punch. His expression was rarely satisfied. He grinned and laughed. Now I understand why Superman doesn't like to use his brain. When fists can solve everything, strategies become irrelevant. The Scarlet Beast of Cyttorak was still wailing. The wizard's punch was not just a simple punch through it. In fact, he went straight through its body and sowed the seeds of destruction in its body. Thousands of timed magic bombs were placed in the body of the beast by Shenyan in just 2 seconds. Now is a good time to watch the fireworks. The throat of the Scarlet Beast began to swell abnormally. Its flesh and blood bulged high, and suddenly exploded after reaching a certain node. Chunks of flesh and blood were blown everywhere. This giant beast didn't need to suffer such horror, but it was a pity that its master created it for invasion. Therefore, Shenyan had to give it a very painful death. The wizard pinched his fingers, and hundreds of portals opened around the head of the giant beast, collecting all its lost flesh and blood. They were collected and transformed in the wizard's pocket dimension, and then a huge blade made of the magic power of the Cyttorak creature itself poked out from a newly opened portal. There is a joke that only circulates in the magic world, which goes like this: to deal with the huge Cyttorak creatures, you can only fight back with something bigger than them. I think this may be because Cyttorak has a super small body, so he always craves huge things, for example, huge amounts of magic power, and our souls on Earth. Thinking of this, Shenyan smiled. He did not hold the knife directly, but held it with his mental tentacles. The 170-meter-long blade, which was the same source as the Crimson Beast, began to light up little by little, from the tail to the tip of the blade. At the same time, circles of energy began to spread from the blade to the entire sky. 3 seconds later, it was lifted up. Standing on the ground, Kala couldn't help but squint his eyes. His electronic eyes supported him to do this, but he didn't need to squint to protect his eyes at all. He did this because of his human memory and certain habits. The hind legs of his 2 mechanical legs opened, and sharp mechanical needles protruded from them, firmly piercing into the ground. The huge robot that had fought with Hulk before also disintegrated again, turning into hundreds of solid shields standing in front of him. Even so, the sudden strong wind that came in the next second almost blew him away. Then, there was a huge sound like a planet exploding. Kala was sure that people all over Africa could hear this sound. After the strong wind subsided a little, he finally raised his head from behind the shield. The sky turned scarlet, and the lifeless body of the Scarlet Beast hung beside the hole. It had been completely cut open, and the whole body was horrible. The almost tangible crimson power of Sidorak floated in the air, but it did not exist for long. Soon, as if attracted by something, they quickly floated in one direction. Shenyan stood in that direction. He did not move, but absorbed the power of Sidorak bit by bit. There is a saying that if you want to defeat the monster, you must be determined to become a monster yourself. In just 2 hours since the start of the event, Shenyan has eaten a zombie sentinel that can be called a god, and the crimson beast that died just after it appeared. In fact, the latter's strength is not worse than the former. It is the crystallization of Sidorak's power, and this thing definitely has the ability to destroy the world. It's a pity that it met the mage. Shenyan burped without any image, his eyes emitting a mixture of gold and crimson light, and slowly landed on the ground. T'Challa stared at him, his steel-cast face no longer expressionless, but with humanized worry. My energy detection needle told me that you just absorbed the red energy. Yes. Is it a good thing for you to do this? T'Challa asked. In the few seconds we talked, your energy level has risen a lot. Can humans really withstand such a terrifying force? Don't underestimate the willpower of humans. T'Challa, aren't you an example yourself? The wizard smiled lightly, raised his hand and knocked on his steel breastplate. The banging sound echoed over the wasteland. He said, and I have to do this. What do you mean? T'Challa asked again. Must? Yes. The wizard nodded gently, turned around, and stared at the hole in the sky. I am almost alone in my battle against all the dimensional demons. T'Challa, whether you are willing to admit it or not, this level of battle is no longer something you can intervene in. No one can, only me. I am the last line of defense for the earth. Like Ancient One, my ally is myself. I have no backup, and no helpers I can count on. So, if I don't do something dangerous, we have no hope of winning. After a long silence, with a hint of unwillingness, T'Challa asked, even Thor can't do it? I have his contact information. If you need, I can send him a message within 15 minutes, as long as he wants. It will only take 2 minutes to return to Earth through the Rainbow Bridge. Yes, T'Challa, even Thor can't do it. Standing at T'Challa's angle, he could just see the profile of Shenyan. That half of his face was expressionless, and his jawline was extremely hard, like some kind of solid ice that would not melt for thousands of years. The light that overflowed from his eyes had gradually subsided, and only occasionally could you see the glow of gold and scarlet intertwine with each other flashing. I understand. Then, is there anything else I can help with? Actually, there is. Shenyan turned around and smiled. That should be fine. Come on, Rajiv, let's try it. Wang waved at Rajiv, and an amorphous white glow floated on his right hand. At this time, it was constantly changing its shape, looking quite beautiful. Hearing his words, Rajiv walked over with difficulty. In just a few steps, he was sweating all over. Like Wang, his right hand also had a similar glow floating on it. Wang stretched out his right hand seriously, and the glow floated out. Rajiv did the same action. The moment the glow left his palm, they both summoned frost to cover their palms. Hissing sounds and high-temperature steam rose up, covering the faces of the two. Rajiv exhaled comfortably. The temperature of the white glow was extremely high, and even through the armor, it almost burned his hand. Cooling treatment is necessary, otherwise the hand cannot remain stable, and the next step cannot be taken. Are you okay? Wang asked, and he received a slight nod from Rajiv. The two looked at each other, and through the high-temperature steam, they popped out their right hands. The magic power flowed out from the circulation openings preset in the armor, and was shaped into a circle by their mental power, wrapped outside the two balls of light, accompanied by violent tremors. 2 minutes later, two balls replaced it and stood in place. Seeing this scene, Wang finally breathed a sigh of relief. He complained and said, "Damn, I haven't used this trick for too long, I'm a little rusty." Who would have thought that we would need this thing to open the door of the Holy of Holies? I thought that after the apprenticeship period, I would no longer have to sneak into the library to read books. How dare you say that? You are reading the diaries of female mages. So what? There is a reason why they are placed in the library. Haha. Wang chuckled twice with a fake smile. In the years when diaries were born, diaries were really just diaries, not something written for others to read. Therefore, Those female wizards who have left their names in history will not hide what they have done. From a certain perspective, those diaries can be read as some erotic novels. Rajiv knew he was in the wrong and had no intention of arguing with him. The Frenchman, who looked serious, coughed twice and opened a portal leading to the main door of the Holy of Holies. The sphere followed them through the portal. The king raised his head and looked at the main door of the Holy of Holies. There was an ancient mark on the door of this building that was completely invisible to mortals, and 8 different runes were glowing faintly on it. Seeing this scene, he finally let go of his heart. The runes are still working, and the safety of the Holy of Holies is at least guaranteed. But why Strange can't contact is still a point that needs to be cautious. They stood apart, each holding a sphere and slowly crushing it, and the overflowing glow soon spread all over their bodies. The runes on the door made a low hum, driving the door to slowly open. The king and Rajiv hurried in, but the scene inside made both of them stunned. That is not what the Holy of Holies should look like. 2 more chapters. Chapter 642 Demon's Proposal. As far as the eye can see, there is a desolate Gobi desert, not to mention animals. There are not many plants. Wang stared at the scene in front of him in a daze. Even when Rajiv patted his shoulder a few times, he did not come back to his senses. Wang, hey, come back to your senses. After calling twice and still no response, Rajiv had no choice but to hit Wang on the back of his head with his mental tentacles. Under the severe pain, Wang finally came back to his senses. He did not blame Rajiv for hitting him, but took 2 deep breaths to calm down. Rajiv was not as shocked as he was. He remained calm as always. This is one of the reasons why he can be a lecturer of Kamardage. But when he raised his head, the 3 suns hanging in the sky still made Rajiv gasp with gritted teeth. This is really a ghost. Rajiv rubbed his wrist and pursed his lips. Ancient One, there is a high probability that we can't go back. Wang didn't refute him, but used the detection spell engraved by Sequence 1 to cast the all-seeing eye on himself. 2 white lights lit up in his eyes. A few minutes later, Wang nodded to Rajiv with an unpleasant expression. I agree with you, Rajiv. There is a high probability that we can't go back. The space in the Sanctum Sanctorum has been moved artificially. This is another dimension. Now I know why Strange didn't respond to our messages. In addition, with a bang, the light blade popped out from the side of Wang's right hand. The pure energy blade began to distort the air. He said to Rajiv, I'm afraid we are not very welcome here. Looking at the huge army of undead sweeping over the horizon in the distance, Rajiv nodded without changing his expression. Then he raised his hands and gave a standard French military salute. Magic began to gather between his hands. Although the posture was weird, a huge tornado had begun to form behind him. In just a few seconds, a huge tornado more than 10 meters high blew by. The sand spun rapidly in it, turning into an indestructible blade. Beads of sweat flowed down Rajiv's forehead, and his raised hands trembled slightly. Wang was on guard beside him. This was the tacit understanding they had developed over more than 10 years of cooperation. Once encountering such an occasion that required a large-scale destruction spell, Wang would be on guard for Rajiv, and the Frenchman who specialized in large-scale destruction spells would begin to vent his magic. You know, this Frenchman's nickname in the magic world is the Turret. There are only 2 explanations for being able to stand out from a group of crazy people who like explosions and get this title. One is that Rajiv likes explosions more than them, and the other is that Rajiv's strength is terrifying. In fact, both are true. The tornado roared to the front of the undead army that was rushing on the sand sea, destroying their rotten bones, the tattered leather armor hanging on their bodies, and the rusty weapons in their hands. The swirling sand ground everything into powder, and this was not the end. Rajiv suddenly waved his hands down, and the nature of the magic changed in an instant. Wind turned into fire. A 15-meter-tall, manic fire giant appeared in the same place. It had just appeared, and the ground turned like glass. Wherever it walked, it left huge footprints of flowing magma, and the terrifying heat blew towards Wang and Rajiv along the breeze. Can't you use a more low-key spell? Wang shouted. We are now in a strange dimension that we don't know the details of, and it looks very unfriendly. You summoned a fire giant right away? Rajiv smiled carefreely and said, what do you know? This is called reasonable deterrence. If those things under the desert don't want to die, they will definitely hide from us after seeing the fire giant I summoned. Yes, but they may suddenly have the idea of challenging us. Wang pointed weakly to the horizon on the other side of them. There, a scorpion-like giant was crawling out of the desert and running towards them. Its two huge eyes flashing green light were full of undisguised anger. You know, Rajiv, you should really learn the habits of animals. Looking at Rajiv's face that suddenly stiffened, Wang said faintly, sometimes, animals will regard large creatures that suddenly appear in their territory as invaders. Well, now we have to face two different attackers. Dash. The sound of sonic boom resounded over the wasteland again. Shenyan floated in the air, carefully observing the results of his battle. Just now, the unwilling Sidorak sent two more powerful crimson beasts, and their fate was no different from the first one. The stubborn crimson demon has not realized that if he does not come in person or pull the mage into his dimension, sending more of his creations will only be a dessert for Shenyan. However, as far as the current situation is concerned, Shenyan hopes that he will react more slowly and send a few more crimson beasts. Although Sidorak himself is not very good, his power is very popular. The hole in the African sky can only hold a limited number of monsters. Although wars are raging all over the world, the mages of Kamartaj are already enough to deal with those minor fights. The dimensional demons obviously haven't realized that their usual methods are no longer effective against the fully evolved mages. Therefore, what Shenyan has to do now is actually very simple. He just needs to stay here. However, not all of the dimensional demons who were driven out are as stubborn as Sidorak. Another kind of power soon permeated the whole, an ancient, deep, and dead power. The sky suddenly darkened, and Shenyan frowned. He moved his fingers slightly, and the mirror dimension was released in an instant, isolating the influence of this power. Then, a thick and dark tentacle stretched out from the hole, followed by a huge body like a mountain range. On the torso composed of many tentacles, a huge eye that was salivating at Shenyan slowly blinked. "How are you, Shumagolas?" Shenyan called out the real name of the ancient demon god calmly. He made a strange squirming sound, and a deep chill spread in the air. Shumagolas, also known as the Eye Demon, one of the ancient gods, born in an outer dimension, visited the earth billions of years ago. He ruled the earth for a period of time. He is the ruler of hundreds of dimensions, able to manipulate time and destroy everything. Among all the known news about the Eye Demon, only one thing is good news for Shenyan. If it is not in his native dimension, Shumagolas's power will be greatly weakened. The Eye Demon that appeared in front of Shenyan has the size of a mountain and an unfathomable terrifying power, but this is actually just a small part of his true body. Can you beat him? Let's try. The mage was about to take action, but the Eye Demon raised a tentacle. His voice sounded wise. "Don't be so anxious to fight me, Shenyan. I didn't come here to devour your soul, although I have long been drooling over you." "Oh? Then what do you want to do?" Shenyan raised his finger and pointed to the huge hole in the sky. "I can feel that there are many of my old opponents waiting in line there." "You grabbed the position, but you don't plan to do anything?" Shumagolas replied calmly. "I am not as stupid and stubborn as Sidorak. I have devoured countless screaming souls. Because of this, my wisdom is absolutely beyond the reach of ordinary people. Even the dimensional demons of the same level as me can't do it. My eyes see farther than them." These short-sighted people think that the angels who came from afar are going to join forces with them to destroy you, but I know that they have deeper intentions. Shumagolas slowly rolled up its tentacles that were thousands of meters long, and its huge body like a mountain slowly fell to the ground. The mirror space immediately let out a wail of being overwhelmed. Shenyan increased the magic power so that it would not break. Then he asked, "Then what do you want to do?" "I want to join forces with you, Shenyan." Shumagolas said solemnly, "We can't come here by ourselves. The fragments of power we have separated can't defeat you even if they pass through the world barriers one by one. They will only be swallowed by you and make you stronger. I can see through time, and you will definitely become an existence at the same level as us. That's why I have no intention of being your enemy anymore. It's just in Earth, and I already have a lot. But those angels are different. Although they conceal their greed very well, I can see that their greed is endless. If we cooperate with them, even if we can win, their next target will be us." The ancient demon explained the interests involved clearly, without hiding anything. "That's why I want to join forces with you, Shenyan. I will go back to the hole, and I will stop those of your kind who want to come and kill you in the outer dimension. And you, just promise me one thing." The wizard nodded expressionlessly. "Go ahead." He knew that the eye demon had the strength to stop the dimensional demon who wanted to come. He could even frighten the Trinity of Vishanti. That's why the proposal he made was quite tempting. "I want you to kill those angels who dared to come here. Leave no one alive." Shumagola's voice was filled with undisguised anger and murderous intent. "How dare they fool me? I know you can devour energy and leave our dimension. Mage, go kill them, and then kill all of their kind. If necessary, you can even summon me." One of the eye demon's tentacles slowly rolled up, and the thousands of meters long tentacle turned into pure power and handed it to the mage, without any malice, just the purest source of power. The eye demon's sincerity was clear. Shenyan finally laughed. "Okay," he said briefly, showing his teeth. "The contract is established. There are also chapters in 4K, which will be later." Chapter 643 Death. The king was eating half a piece of scorpion meat in his hand. The crystal-clear white tender meat looked delicious. The poor scorpion rushed towards the fire giant and was roasted dry by the fire giant a few minutes later. The meat at the bottom was grilled, and the meat in the middle was steamed by high-temperature steam. Cooking once, two flavors. The king was eating happily, but he saw Rajiv looking into the distance with a sad face. In between chewing, he asked incoherently, "Why don't you eat, Rajiv?" "Can I eat it?" Rajiv's eyes twitched. "We are in another dimension now, king. We don't know if this thing that looks like a scorpion is poisonous. Although it smells good, why can you eat it so deliciously without caring? Since we are here, we should make the best of it." The king smiled. "You won't be able to find the way back for a while, right? You might as well fill your stomach." "I really envy your optimism." "Then let's eat together." "You know what? This guy's meat tastes very rich. The charcoal grilled meat is like lamb, and this part is cooked like chicken." Rajiv looked at him strangely, stretched out his hand to pull a small piece of charcoal grilled meat and stuffed it into his mouth. His eyes lit up, and then he started eating like a king. The two sat in the desert, with dead bones scattered all around them. The ground was glass formed by high temperature, and the huge scorpion carapace was still emitting residual heat. Around them, it was like a towering wall. The two sat between the separated pieces of meat and feasted. After eating and drinking, they set off again. Walking in the desert has always been a difficult task, let alone other things. Just distinguishing the direction is enough to make many people drink a pot. Fortunately, they are mages, so they don't care about things that ordinary people need to be careful about. If it weren't for saving magic power, they could even fly away directly instead of using the acceleration mode to trot in the desert. As Wang ran, he even had the heart to joke with Rajiv. "What do you think about us turning into a Hummer?" Rajiv rolled his eyes and said, "Come on. There is no such spell engraved in the armor. Besides, the car may not be able to run fast in acceleration mode." This is the truth. The acceleration mode of the armor allows the two to run as fast as flying even if they are jogging. The three suns above their heads are still scorching, but fortunately the armor isolates most of the temperature, so they are not sweating profusely. Wang would release the all-seeing eye from time to time to observe the distance. He observed an oasis while eating. Apart from anything else, there must be life next to the oasis and the desert. They have to try their luck. If the local residents can communicate, it would be a good thing. Half an hour later, they approached the oasis, but what appeared in front of the two was not the so-called local residents, but Strange with long hair and a super big beard. His clothes were tattered, and a blanket that was almost rotten was wrapped around his waist. He looked like a homeless person. He looked at the two men in astonishment, holding a wooden stick in his hand, which seemed to have the functions of both a weapon and a cane. They stared at each other for several seconds, and Strange almost burst into tears. "I've been here for 4 years. Alone," he said in a breakdown. 4 years. The magic disappeared, and I had to learn it all over again. Wang coughed, turned his face away, and tried not to laugh out loud. Rajiv was much more frank than he was cautious. The Frenchman burst out laughing immediately after hearing what he said. "You're still laughing?" Strange looked at him with disbelief on his face. "Do you know how I spent the past 4 years?" Strange. Wang stretched out his hand and attracted his attention. "Look, Rajiv is a bastard, that's true, but let's talk about why you are here." After calming down the emotional Strange for a while, they were finally able to talk to each other properly. Strange took the two to a small wooden house in the middle of the oasis, which looked shabby and his craftsmanship was obviously not good. However, having a place to live is good enough, and we can't ask for too much. "I just closed my eyes and came here," Strange said with a depressed face. "I thought it was because of the problem with the magic supply that it became so hot. As soon as I opened my eyes, there were 3 suns in the sky and the desert was all around. It took me half a year to get out of here. In the first week, I could only eat some insects in the desert, and I ate them raw. If I didn't have a good memory and could learn basic spells again by recalling the knowledge I learned in the past, I would probably have died of thirst in the desert." It was a year later that we found the oasis. At the beginning, I couldn't even sleep peacefully. Strange was full of fear. One night, I slept in an open space. In the middle of the night, I found a bone hand stretched out from the sand, grabbed my calf, and tried to grab me down. The king and Rajiv looked at each other and thought of the undead army. "Anyway, I've been here alone for a long time. Meditation absorbs very little magic power. I summon water once every 5 days, and meditation takes 3 days to perform a material transformation spell. I only have 1 pot now." Strange pointed to the corner of the room and said, "I perform a material transformation every 3 days, turning wood or sand into edible meat. God, I really miss those junk foods." He said it very miserably, but Wang couldn't help laughing. Fortunately, he has good acting skills, and with a face. Strange didn't see it. Wang coughed and said, "So, where is this? Do you have any idea?" "How do I know where this is?" It would have been better if he didn't mention it. As soon as he mentioned it, Strange collapsed again. "My knowledge is useless, not to mention knowing where this is. I can't even tell what kind of ghosts they are. There's no smell of black magic or necromancy on them, and there's no powerful evil spirit nearby." Strange waved his arms excitedly. "I try to figure out how these ghosts crawled out every day, but I can't figure it out. Damn it, damn it, damn it." He hammered the ground hard with a wooden stick. Wang understood that for Strange, a slightly paranoid person, not being able to know the answer to this question might make him feel more frustrated than not being able to go home. However, this is not a top priority. Wang calmed his emotions again. "Calm down, Strange. Listen, we must have a way to go back, okay?" At this moment, there was a knock on the door of Strange's simple home. Shumagolas, you are such a good person. Looking at his figure disappearing in the void, Shenyan sighed from the bottom of his heart. Who would have thought that he would win twice in the deal with the eye demon? Shumagolas will stop those dimensional demons who want to continue attacking. There is no guarantee how many he can stop, but the strength of the eye demon is beyond words, especially outside the dimension. He can play better. Second, he generously gave part of his power to the mage. Shenyan was not worried that Shumagolas would tear up the contract. For an ancient like him, the concept of tearing up the contract does not exist at all. Their pride does not allow them to do such a thing. Even the old bastard Mephisto would at most tamper with the contract and would never violate the terms of the contract. The mage, who was in a very happy mood, smiled slightly, and quickly changed to a serious face. He sighed and reached out to grab the energy floating in front of him. The eye demon, Shumagolas, the Chaos Lord, also known as the Screaming Soul Devourer, is a terrifying existence that can lick the stars as if they were yogurt. This person rarely makes deals with mages, and most spellcasters' first thought when they see him is, "Oh, I'm dead." The reason is simple. Shumagolas can devour magic power. This is one of the reasons why Shenyan felt unsure when facing him. He is basically the natural enemy of magic. In fact, he can draw energy from various energy sources. Shumagolas is not unkillable. Unfortunately, he existed before time existed. This means that it is useless to kill him. Shumagolas can come back from the end of time and do it again. He looked at the energy in his hand. The huge amount of energy from the eye demon can make him take another step up. But the question is, should he do this? After thinking it over again and again, he still didn't continue to devour. He has eaten enough, and he can't chew more. The more important point is that quantity is not the same as quality. He can't digest the energy from the eye demon in a short time. Even if they exist in the mage's body, they can't give him any substantial help. He doesn't need extra magic to cast spells. He is not a white-haired man named Ka. He Shenyan threw the energy into his pocket dimension and flew to the vicinity of the hole, carefully observing its edge. The violent power of the eye demon came from inside. It was obvious that he had already started fighting with those ancients. However, the hole itself was still operating, which meant that there was still a lucky person who had passed the eye demon's blockade and was about to reach his world. He Shenyan was ready for the battle, but after a third of a second, he stopped the destruction spell he was about to prepare in surprise. What emerged from the hole was not a huge beast or an ancient evil god. It was not a devil with flames all over its body, or a group of amorphous black shadows. What emerged from the hole was a woman wearing a cloak and with a graceful figure. She had extremely smooth black hair, and the color was so dark that it seemed to absorb light and was fascinating. The woman had a faint smile on her face, and black lip gloss was painted on her tender lips. Although she acted without any threat, the wizard became more nervous than ever. Death. He uttered these two words solemnly. What brings you here? Don't be so reserved, Master. I have known you for a long time. Death had a charming smile on her face. She slowly floated in front of the master. Her white and slender arms stretched out from under her cloak, and gently made an inviting gesture to Shenyan. Do you mind talking to me? She said it as if I could refuse. Death smiled and nodded. Of course you have the right to refuse, Master. In fact, if you want, I can leave now. The question is, do you want to? She looked at Shenyan expectantly. After a long silence, Shenyan finally shook his head at her. What do you want? Like my creation Shumagolas, I came to you to propose a deal. Why are you so surprised? It's an open secret that he is my creation. Death smiled and covered his lips. After all, I am the symbol of death, and he just happens to bring me a lot of death. What deal do you want to make with me? It's very simple, mage. At this point, the smile on Death's face that seemed to never fade away disappeared. Her beautiful appearance gradually faded, and was replaced by a skull. It opened its mouth, its teeth clashed, and in the monotonous sound, it spit out the voice of death. There is such a group of winged outsiders, the skull said. You should be very familiar with their appearance and what they do. They plagiarized the image created by an ancient creator for his own followers, stirred up trouble in our world, and took away countless souls that belonged to me. Hatred burned in its empty eye sockets like a burning flame. Those souls should have rested in the realm of death, not been thrown into the soul furnace to be used as fuel. Death said gloomily. You are a smart man, wizard. You should know what I want you to do. In fact, Lady Death, your creation, Shumagolas, made an identical request to me not long ago. No, it's different. Shenyan's words were interrupted by Death. This little known, one of the true creator gods shook his head. He is he, and I am me. He has his own free will. He asked you to kill those angels because he hates them, but I am different. Death came to the wizard, flesh and blood grew, and in an instant, that beautiful face returned. She looked at Shenyan solemnly, held his face, and whispered, I ask you to kill them because I want you to avenge those dead souls. Angels are stirring up trouble in the world with stolen images. They have taken away many souls who should have been sleeping in peace and deprived them of the opportunity to find peace after death. I ask you to avenge this, Shenyan. And in return Death gave him a deep kiss. In an instant, the power of an ancient dark realm began to surge in Shenyan's blood vessels. He widened his eyes. The power of death changed his form of existence in that instant. From this moment on, all the ancients in the multiverse knew his name. You will be my messenger. Chapter 644 Desert. Shenyan's feelings at this time were quite complicated. Just at the moment after the kiss ended, his life form was completely changed. A feeling that seemed to be there and not there, but seemed to come from the depths of his soul whispering to him, I look forward to it, my messenger. Death slowly drifted away from him. This existence that constitutes one of the factors of the existence of the world could not stay in a single world for too long. She still had a smile on her face. I look forward to the day when you bring their souls. Shenyan watched her go away silently, and removed the mirror world. He slowly fell to the ground, covered his chest, and took a deep breath. What does it feel like? Everything is in his hands. The mage raised his right hand and stared at the dim sun in the sky through the gap between his fingers. He had a feeling at this moment that as long as he wanted, he could directly kill this burning star, the source of life on earth. Moreover, this was not an illusion. The power of death. Shenyan's facial lines suddenly became hard, and no one knew what he was thinking. His eyes were turbulent. Someone is knocking on the door, Wang whispered, and slowly stood up from the ground without making any sound. He was closest to the door, so he put his hand directly on the wooden door. Strange's poor door didn't even have a handle, and the opening and closing had to be violently dismantled. Rajiv's reaction was not slow either. He immediately slapped a silent shielding magic circle on Strange. He had no armor on his body, so he couldn't completely block the sound of footsteps or the slight sounds of walking and moving like the two of them. Although Strange had been alone for 4 years and had to relearn magic during this period, his psychological quality and ability to act as a supreme wizard were still there. The horse-faced wizard immediately raised his finger and pointed above the door frame. Wang looked in the direction of his finger and found 3 blasting runes emitting a faint glow there. Old Wang nodded solemnly, and without any extra gestures, Strange and Rajiv consciously stood behind him. 2 black mists lit up in Rajiv's hands. This was a curse for living beings, which could make the cursed feel extreme pain and slow down their movements. He was not the first person now, so he only needed to do auxiliary work. This was an instinct developed from years of cooperation with Wang. As for Strange, he stood at the end with a wooden stick in his hand, which was better than nothing. Taking a deep breath, Wang pushed the wooden door. With a slight sound, the door fell down, making a dull sound on the sand. A man in a white robe and a smile on his face stood opposite them. The smile was so amiable. Hello. He bowed first, then raised his hands to indicate that he was unarmed. Can the 3 of you come out and talk? For my sincerity. Wang narrowed his eyes and looked at the man carefully, with a blue light flashing in his eyes. The all-seeing eye did not tell him any useful information, not a single bit. There was no magic in this man, and because of this, he became more alert. How do you know there are 3 people? Wang asked slowly. His legs slowly opened, his standing posture changed inadvertently. The desert told me. The man smiled and spread his hands. A grain of sand floated in the middle of his palms. It looked small and insignificant, but it was shining with a golden light. The desert? Yes, the desert will tell me what I want to know. The man took a step back and bowed again. Please allow me to introduce myself. When he raised his head again, his face had turned into a quicksand made of yellow sand. Just looking at it made Wang feel dizzy. He gritted his teeth and did not attack immediately, but lowered his posture cautiously. Who are you? Just the incarnation of this desert, the man said calmly. Don't worry. He sat down in a friendly and easygoing manner, stroking the sand on the ground. That focused and affectionate gaze made Wang feel deeply sad for some reason. The all-seeing eye passively showed him some phantoms from ancient times. The world has changed. The desert turned into grassland, trees blocked the view above his head, and a breeze with fragrance blew gently across his cheek. A colorful bird led many birds of different colors to fly across the sky. A rainbow rose at night, and 3 gentle moons hung in the violet sky. Wang blinked in a trance and came back to his senses. The scene in front of him came into his eyes again. The man was still sitting on the ground, but he said to him as if he had predicted the future, "It's beautiful here, right?" "Yes." The man smiled, and there was a sadness on his calm face that made people unable to look away. Even the quicksand could not hide it. He whispered, "This was not a desert before, guests from afar. This was a beautiful world before, without war, death, hunger, and pain. But things that are too beautiful will always be destroyed. Unfortunately, I only understand this truth now." The man stood up with a handful of sand in his hand. He threw it into the sky. and a scene that stunned the three people appeared. The originally stable dimensional space was cut open at that moment, and the exposed dark narrow crack was filled with crazy malice. The creatures from the other world discovered this hole, and were now squeezing each other to the point of bleeding, wanting to come in and feast. But the man took a step forward and grabbed the edge of the broken dimension with both hands. What happened next was quite challenging Wang's rationality as a mage. The man pulled hard, and the scene revealed in the hole changed. From the swarming, densely packed creatures from the other world, it turned into a scene familiar to the three people. It was the Holy of Holies. The man stood aside and gestured to them. "Please, guests, return to the world that belongs to you. This world that is dying does not belong to you." "Dying?" "Yes." The man sighed softly. 713 years have passed, and no new life has been born. The scorpion you killed has survived for 3,213 years. My world is no longer saved. Go back quickly." By the way, Wang paused after crossing the portal. He was the last one among the three. Strange rushed in first, followed by Rajiv. Wang was the last one. He stopped when he heard these two words, and heard the man's last words. A calm word, but full of anger. "If you can, please kill them for me." Wang turned around suddenly, and the portal closed at a very fast speed. At the last moment, he was able to glimpse the man's true body. He turned into a pile of sand and merged into the desert. There is one more update, and it will be added tomorrow. Damn, I am stupid. The chapter name has been wrong since the 20th and I can't change it. Chapter 645. Be more decent. Shenyan walked up the stairs slowly, holding a still bleeding head in his hand. The head was a little too big for his body. The broken spine alone was almost as tall as his body. But the mage held it in one hand, and it seemed effortless. He walked up the long stairs. On the stairs, a creature curled up on the throne was looking at him with horror. Bang! Shenyan threw the head at its feet and shook his head. He didn't say anything, but scared it half to death. I had held it in for a long time, and finally a humble "I apologize" jumped out of its throat. Shenyan happened to walk in front of it and laughed at what he said. "After I killed all the creatures in your dimension, you apologized to me?" His Majesty, the great ruler of the Girling dimension, Ramogolf. The wizard walked up to it, stretched out his hand to pull it up from the throne, kicked it to the bottom of the steps, and then sat on it himself. "Your apology is really sincere enough." Ramogolf, as one of the dimensional demons that attacked the earth together, is the weaker one among them. Not only is his ability to lend money to the wizards relatively low, but even his followers are often summoned by the wizards as experimental materials. The Girling dimension he ruled is rich in a race that has nothing but thick skin and great strength, and they often grow very large. The head that the wizard just held was just a young Ramogolf follower. However, because of this, they are often used as food by creatures in other dimensions. We can say that Ramogolf and the Girling dimension it ruled are a joke. Their fighting power can only be used against mortals, and because they do not have enough mysterious factors, they can even be injured by firepower weapons. An anti-tank sniper bullet can kill a follower of Ramogolf. Such a thing dares to invade the earth? Shenyan lazily leaned on the throne that originally belonged to Ramogolf, and began to count the heavyweight figures of Ramogolf's predecessors with his fingers. The serpent god Set, an ancient old god, can destroy your dimension thousands of times with just a flick of his tongue. He was driven out by us, and now he can only stay in his own dimension and keep giving birth to children, and he can no longer leave. Mephisto, the devil, the lord of hell, one of the candidates for Satan, knowing that I was coming, he simply abandoned his hell and ran away, without even leaving his home. Dormammu's sister, Omar, possessing power that even Dormammu fears, that idiot imprisoned her in the void between the worlds, thinking that he could monopolize the dark dimension forever. Of course, his sister escaped. A war broke out between Omar and Dormammu and reached the earth. In the aftermath, more than 3,000 civilian casualties were caused. In return, I threw both of them into the void, forever exiled, and never able to speak again. Tibur, the ruler of the sixth dimension, one of the former rulers of the earth. He fought against countless old gods and was a corrupt spirit who would come to take over the earth at the right time. In 2014, He felt that the time was ripe, so he came, and then I beat him into a disability. He will never be able to walk again in this life, even if he returns to his own dimension. Your Majesty, how dare you get a share of the war to invade the earth? Shenyan smiled gently. Don't you know who I am? Haven't you heard that a crazy earthling will constantly slaughter those races or evil gods who dare to invade the earth between the universe and the dimension? After he finished speaking, Ramogov just rolled to the bottom of the stairs. This humble ruler didn't care about his manners, and immediately knelt on the ground and kowtowed repeatedly, and even deliberately withdrew the power from his forehead, so that his face was covered with blood. The dull sound echoed in this empty dimension one after another, but Shenyan yawned boredly. As the first lucky person after death, Lamogov was not qualified at all, not to mention letting him use the power of death. Even the real mages were unwilling to do so. This guy, who was not sure whether he was unlucky or lucky, stole a position from a group of demons who were stopped by the Eye Demon, and thought he had caught a great opportunity to invade the earth. He even built a portal between his own dimension and the earth. Then, Shenyan flew in and killed all the creatures in the entire dimension except it within 3 minutes. Now, it is begging for mercy. There is no need to humiliate yourself anymore, Lamogov. Shenyan stood up from its throne and stared at this humble creature. Save some dignity for yourself. Before death comes, you should maintain a little bit of decency. After all, you were once the ruler of a dimension. I don't understand, sir. Lamogov squeezed a dry smile on his ugly black face. It couldn't finish the second half of the sentence, because Shenyan's eyes had turned completely black. With just one look, Lamogov's breathing stopped forever. Its life is bound to this dimension, and it prospers with it and suffers with it. When it dies, the collapse of the dimension begins. The sound of broken glass continued to be heard all around, and Shenyan raised his head calmly, staring at the rare destruction of the dimension in 10,000 years. A pair of gentle arms stretched out from the void and gently hugged him. Death whispered in his ear, "Well done, my messenger. Lamogov has ushered in a painless death, and in the afterlife, it will gain unprecedented peace." Feeling the warmth behind him, Shenyan was rarely stunned. Don't get me wrong, he was not suddenly dominated by his lower body, but was attracted by the huge power in death. He got a part of her power, and because of this, he craves more. Death obviously knew this, and she smiled softly without caring. Not only did she not let go of him, but she hugged him tighter. Death began to whisper in Shenyan's ear. Do you know, my messenger? In the past, only a handful of people have received this honor, and they all died in the end. Some people couldn't stand the days without meeting me and chose to commit suicide, while others coveted my power and were willing to sink into death. Can you resist this temptation? Shenyan gritted his teeth, suddenly opened a portal, and walked in as if escaping. Death's laughter was still echoing in his ears, with a certain expectation and tenderness. The number of chapters returned to normal. Damn, how did I get this wrong? Chapter 646. A man beyond his time. Back in Africa, no dimensional demon had descended into the hole for 3 hours. The sky gradually darkened, and Shenyan could feel the breath of the Eye Demon rising in the hole. Obviously, he was very trustworthy. The ancient old god blocked most of the dimensional demons who wanted to enter the earth for him in the outer dimension of time chaos, and the wizard was deeply moved by this. Good man. What a good man. What kind of a good man is this? Selfless dedication, heroic fighting, blocking the enemy from the world for mankind. Shenyan thought that if he were the supreme wizard, he would give him the honorary guardian of Kamardaj. But then again, how can this hole be eliminated? Of course, there is the most crucial point. What about the angels? They haven't appeared yet, and Shenyan doesn't think that this bunch of winged bastards are sleepwalking. And the breath exuding from the hole does not have the disgusting holiness of them. That is, they are not in the outer dimension. Thinking of this, the wizard narrowed his eyes. Just when he was about to find Scytho and to have a good chat, a communication from the Sanctum Sanctorum interrupted his action. Strange's voice was filled with anxiety. Are you okay? I'm fine, the wizard replied, with a strange voice. Strange obviously heard it. He paused for 2 seconds and asked again, What happened? Long story short, Shumagola's and I made a deal. He selflessly chose to help us. He is currently fighting a bloody battle with a large group of dimensional demons outside the world. Well, Strange, I suggest you set up a tablet for him. In the Sanctum Sanctorum, listening to the voice coming from the communication, Strange's expression gradually became distorted. Wang and Rajiv sat opposite him. The two looked at each other, and their expressions were surprisingly consistent. It was a kind of calmness after seeing the storms and waves. Wang even took a sip of the tea in front of him, and his heart was definitely as cold as ice. Then what? Say it all at once while I can still bear it now, Strange said weakly. Looking at the night sky, Shenyan smiled. Also, I became the messenger of death. Puff. Hearing this, Wang sprayed a mouthful of tea on Rajiv's face beside him. Fortunately, the latter did not take off his armor. The scalding tea was blocked by the shield of the armor and evaporated in the high temperature. Rajiv's face was hidden in the rising steam, and his expression could not be seen, but he suddenly slid from the sofa to the blanket, as if he was not sitting firmly. Can you say it again? Strange asked with trembling shoulders. I became the messenger of death. It's that simple, nothing surprising. Yes, it's one of the creator gods in your memory, the basic element that constitutes the existence of the universe and the world. Death. Under the night sky of Africa, Shenyan's tone was still calm. To be honest, I don't think this is a good thing. He lowered his head, his eyes gradually immersed in pure black, and this new perspective made him grit his teeth. The power of death brought a much greater improvement than he thought. It was not just a simple change in life form. As the messenger of death, there were some things he knew immediately after mastering that part of the power. For example, nothing could kill him, the destruction of the world, or even the conceptual deprivation of life and soul. These things, as long as they were in the world controlled by death, had no effect on him. Even if someone was strong enough to destroy his body and soul, death would gently refuse him to enter the realm of the dead. In other words, if he didn't want to die, no one could make him die. For another example, under the power, he could easily make anything, anyone, anything die, without having to pay any price, because death gave him the greatest permission. It was a kind of trust that seemed to be unreserved. The power of power was so terrible that Shenyan could even make the air die with just a thought, and the consequences of doing so were obvious. For a moment, everyone was silent. Strange didn't even know what to say. None of the knowledge he learned from the classics told him how to deal with the situation in front of him. Becoming a messenger of death? What are the pros and cons? What is the impact? No one in their history has done this before, and Shenyan is the first. This is not a good thing, and the first in the magic world often means doom. For example, the first madman who tried to cross the border, Vifan, and the wizard who invented the fireball technique. The half of his hand bone left from the experiment of the fireball technique is still sealed in Kamardage. Another example is the first wise man who tried time travel, Norla's Whitebeard, who is even more heavyweight and trapped himself in a time loop forever. To this day, he can only exist 10 years after 3:12 and 47 seconds p.m. on September 11, 1981 in London, England. After 10 years, he will continue to cycle. And what will be the ending of Shenyan, the first person to become a messenger of death? No one knows. Strange couldn't help but get angry. Yeah, you know this isn't a good thing. For the sake of Ancient One, can't you just not take such a risky thing for once? Don't get excited, brother. I didn't take the initiative to find her to make a deal this time. The wizard's tone was still calm, as if it wasn't surprising at all. Besides, I don't think I have the right to refuse. At this point, he smiled. Let's stop here. I have to talk to Scythorn. He ended the communication. The atmosphere in the Sanctum Sanctorum was a little stagnant. Strange's expression was very bitter. He sighed. It's like this again. We can only follow behind him and do small things, just like when Ancient One was still alive. When danger comes, they are always the first to take most of the risks. And what kind of supreme sorcerer am I? Wang ignored his self-pity at all. He poured himself a cup of new tea and took a sip. Don't fall into a vicious circle, Strange. You are doing well in the position of supreme sorcerer. As he spoke, he laughed. We are all doing well, aren't we? If you can't help him, then try not to drag him down. There is not much we can do, but we have to do something. This is not his world alone, and Shenyan is not the only wizard of Kamardaj. Rajiv sat up from the floor and nodded. Although this fat man is sometimes unreliable, such as spraying tea all over me, but what he said is right. Strange, you demand too much of yourself. He is no longer someone who can be caught up with. For someone who is far ahead of our time. The Frenchman stood up and smiled wisely. Give him the greatest support. There are 3 more chapters. The author is not at home today, writing on his phone, so it may be slow, but there will definitely be 4 chapters today. Chapter 647, The True Meaning of Death. Coming to Zisong's dimension again, there are some small changes here. Well, not that small actually. In the dimension that was originally dark, there are many damaged places now, as if someone wiped it clean with a rag, and light is shining through. This is not a good thing, which means that Zisong's power can no longer maintain his dimension. The light that comes in is actually the chaotic timeline light in the outer dimension. Shenyan carefully avoided the hole. Being sucked in would not be a problem for him. But the less trouble. Being thrown into an infinite loop of timeline is always very troublesome. He came to the deepest part of the dark dimension. In the past, Zisong sat here, sitting on his throne, but now, the familiar scarlet throne has become tattered, and there are even traces of burning on the corners. Zisong himself looks even more embarrassed. Not only is he missing an arm, but his face is also full of bruises. Seeing Shenyan coming, he said nothing, just nodded. Laugh if you want to, Zisong said weakly. That's right, the great demon shadow, Hades. Zisong was beaten up by a group of angels. The wizard did not laugh at him, but looked around. How many did you kill? Not much. Zisong grinned. You only have to deal with half less. Should I thank you again? Shenyan said jokingly, and Zisong actually nodded seriously. You should thank me. Old Zisong has never been so angry. He spread his hands and began to complain. I don't know where those birdmen got my Dark God book from, and reversed the dimension and ran in directly. You know, I was still watching the excitement in the outer dimension. I don't know what the eye demon guy went crazy for, and fought with a large group of dimensional demons who originally wanted to jointly attack the Earth. The scene was very exciting. I was enjoying it, and they came to my door. TSK. The individual strength of this group of pirated angels is not very good, but the weapons they carry are very tricky. At this point, Zisong waved his hand thoughtfully. As the energy gathered, a shadow gradually appeared in front of the two. The silver sphere was suspended in the air, with a large hole in the middle, emitting a soft white light. Zisong pointed at the thing and shook his head. From the feeling, it is more like a tool for storing energy than a weapon, the Hades said calmly. It can ignore restrictions and even ignore my absolute dimensional control to absorb energy. You have to be careful. Just ignore me. He widened his eyes in surprise, and his expression was as surprised as a history student who learned that stockings were originally worn by men. Have you always been so crazy? The first day you met me? Shenyan asked back. Let's stop here, Zisong. From the beginning to now, you have given enough help, whether it is the intelligence or the angels killed, so I really have to give you something in return. Hearing this, Zisong put his fingers together expectantly, and he saw that Shenyan's eyes gradually turned pure black. It was a color even darker than his dark dimension. The corners of Hades' mouth curled up, and he smiled very happily. His missing arm was recovering little by little, the purple on his face disappeared, and even the throne returned to its original appearance. Take good care of your injuries, Zisong. Leaving this sentence, the wizard left. Hades looked at the place where he left, and then looked at the damaged parts that had been completely restored, and exhaled with a sigh. The power of death can actually do this. He raised his right hand and stared at his lost and recovered arm, since it can also kill the established fact of I am injured. Ancient One, you died too early, otherwise I really want to see the expression on your face. Sitting on his throne, the old man began to laugh. No more delay. In the night sky of Africa, the wizard stared at the huge hole, and his hands gradually raised. Just now, he did an experiment with Zisong and proved one thing, that is, The power of death can not only act on physical objects and concepts, but can even kill certain established facts. This means that he can kill this huge void. This kind of terrifying power that has no cost and is not proportional to the gains and efforts makes Shenyan a little worried. He, like Strange, comes from Kamardaj. Although he is a cross-border wizard, this is the first time he has dealt with an existence like death. He can't understand this kind of power. The fighters punched each other, and the forces collided with each other. When the fist hit the opponent's weakness, he would also feel pain. The wizards no longer need to pay a terrible price to the dimensional demon to cast spells, but magic itself is a price, and magic is needed to cast spells. Even the technology that seems to be profitable needs to pay a price. Tony's armor drive requires energy, and missile launches require raw materials as manufacturing support. We can say that everything in the world has its own price. However, the power of death does not require any so-called price at all. It does not require logical support, meticulous guidance and decades of hard training. To use it, you only need a thought. For example, now, Shenyan's eyes turned into pure black again. The huge void formed by the power of the dimensional demons began to slowly disappear. There was no movement, as calm as breathing, but in just a few seconds, it disappeared. How about my power? Death appeared from the void again. She could not stay for a long time, but she could appear in this posture for a short time. The god hugged Shenyan's neck with her hands, and the posture was intimate, but it made him shudder. It seems that you have realized the problem of power, she said with a smile. Isn't it terrible? This kind of power without any cost. You only need a thought to kill all those who are your enemies. From this moment on, you can rule any dimension you see. Death asked expectantly. It doesn't matter if it is a different dimension or a parallel universe. As long as it is a world I participated in creating, you can set off a frenzy of death in it and become the master of all life. How about my power? The mage did not break free from the arms of death this time, but carefully experienced the feeling of close contact with her. Every time he met death, it meant that his connection with authority deepened. The feeling of increased power was certainly wonderful, but he did not feel the slightest bit of joy or relief in his heart. After a long while, he whispered, "This kind of power scares me." Death gently let go of her hand. "That's right, my messenger." She came to the wizard calmly and firmly, took his right hand, and the illusory figure gradually solidified, and the smile on her face became brighter and brighter. "Congratulations, you have reached a place that no one has ever reached before. None of your predecessors realized this. They were all immersed in the sense of domination brought by power and completely forgot the true meaning of death." The god of creation slowly said, "Death is the end of all life, whether poor or rich, whether gods or mortals, heroes, villains, evil people, selfless people, all these different souls, they can't escape death after all. That's why." Death solemnly let go of her hand, and her figure gradually dissipated. Through her illusory body, thousands of huge white energy bodies appeared under the sky. At the moment when the angels appeared completely, she also disappeared completely. Only those words still echoed in the mage's ears, "My messenger, you must respect life." Looking at the angels who came from afar, Shenyan smiled calmly. "Yes, but they should not be included. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 648, Death of the Mage. There are many ways to respect life. Some people choose not to kill easily, while others choose to become animal protectors and fight for those endangered lives. As for Shenyan, his way is much simpler. Just stop killing. With his palm down, the world turned upside down. The inverted mirror world emerged again, where the sky and the earth were upside down. The angels stood quietly in place, not talking. The huge pure white energy body began to dissipate little by little, turning into overwhelming light points that merged together. Finally, an angel without wings on his back stood in front of the wizard. "Nice to meet you," she said politely. The human crossover wizard named Shenyan, It took us 120,000 years to finally find you. Looking around, she had a peaceful smile on her face. She was as beautiful as a figure walking out of an oil painting, and her quiet and weak temperament made her look non-aggressive. Of course, there is also your world. Authority has no effect on her. The wizard narrowed his eyes. He was not a person who liked to speak harshly before a battle. He would save any words until his opponent was on the verge of death. Therefore, his attack had already begun the moment the mirror world was formed. Unfortunately, the power of death had no effect on the angel from outside the world. She seemed to be aware of what Shenyan had just done. She tilted her head and looked at him carefully. So that's how it is. The multiverse-level gods in this sea of stars favor you. She nodded. But, unfortunately, we are not the original creations of this sea of stars, and his power cannot affect us. Now, wizard, you will be tried for the crime of killing an angel. The White Tower Council cannot protect you, the angel said simply and clearly. You will be executed, and the world you protect will become firewood for the furnace. As soon as the angel finished speaking, he was hit hard in the face. Boom! A violent noise sounded, and Shenyan, whose attack style was gradually approaching that of a berserker, rushed forward. Without relying on magic, he flew with his body alone and caught up with the angel, who was hit to the other side of the sky by this punch. Then there was another punch. This one was even more fierce. The angel's cheek was completely dislocated, bones were broken, and soft white light shone through her body. Is the information wrong? The angel asked in confusion between being beaten. Your physical strength does not match the information. There are many things you don't know. Shenyan threw another punch, and at the same time opened a portal at the point where she landed. The few punches just now had made him understand that if he wanted to fight this thing, he must not choose the battlefield on Earth. The great barrier that blocked the world did not react at all, and did not even stop him from leaving. Floating in the universe, two wings gradually spread out from the back of the angel. The style was simple and without decoration, just like the white dress she was wearing. The angel, who came from afar, raised her hands and tried seriously to capture the figure of the mage in the universe. Her mental power was obviously extremely strong. In an instant, she captured Shenyan, who was 4 galaxies away. Then, the two wings began to emit a frightening white glow. The vast distance between the 4 galaxies was crossed in just 3 seconds. This was not the effect of speed, but a simple displacement. Shenyan narrowed his eyes. Wish come true? Or is it the effect of the wings? This ability. He raised his arm. The power of millions of stars exploding, plus the power of the 2 stars from Captain Marvel. The 2 powers mixed together, bursting out with all his strength. Half of the starry sky was illuminated by the brilliant and gorgeous red gold. The angel rushed towards him, but was pinched by a hand halfway. Power burst. The stable dimensional framework of the real world was blown into a gap. The mage did not stop at all and directly pressed the angel's head on the dimensional gap that was blown out. The power burst out again, accompanied by a crisp sound, and the barrier of the dimension was broken by his own hands. The angel's head was pressed in by him, but there was no change in the chaotic time flow of the outer dimension. At the same time, Shenyan was analyzing her existence with his mental power. The attack this thing just received was enough to kill her thousands of times, but she didn't die once. Not only that, the injury didn't even take place. In less than a second, the angel's displaced cheek returned to its original state. That was not the so-called self-healing ability or the healing spell of heaven, but something else. He had to find the principle. The angel certainly wouldn't sit there and wait for death. She raised her hands, and her weak and boneless hands exerted a little bit of force, and she actually broke free from Shenyan's restraints. She pulled herself back from the outer dimension little by little in a creepy posture, and her head remained the same, completely unaffected by the flow of time. Your attack is ineffective against us, she said calmly, without any emotion, like a cold robot, but there was indeed anger in her golden eyes. At the same time, she raised her hands again. 1.5 minutes after the start of the war, the angel's first attack came. White light emerged from between those small hands, but Shenyan was not hurt at all. His protective magic circle was not touched. Not only that, he even felt a warm feeling. Then, the mage's expression suddenly darkened. It was not an attack, but a blessing. The prayers of countless people rang in Shenyan's ears. At this moment, he heard the prayers of people. Countless different souls whispered in his ears, telling of their sufferings and loyalty to the Lord, and longing for his grace. The prayers were extremely moving, but it made him extremely angry. "Fuck you." Shenyan spoke for the first time since the battle began. The words he used were not very elegant, but carried naked murderous intent. In the dark dimension, Zisong's expression changed for the first time. Yes, he was watching this battle. His originally relaxed expression changed his face at this time, and he was extremely serious. "Blessing? Rank promotion? No. This son of a bitch, she is not so kind." The Hades rarely lost his restraint. Beside him, the scarred-eye demon, Shumagolas, also waved his tentacles, speaking fiercely. "You guessed right, Zisong." She made Shenyan an angel in the broad sense of Christian doctrine. From this moment on, he not only has to face that enemy, but also the prayers of people controlled by angels from countless parallel worlds. Zisong knocked on the armrest of the chair with a gloomy expression. He knew Shenyan better than Shumagolas, so he said, "No, he also needs to face his own anger." Looking at the puzzled eyes of the eye demon, Hades said slowly, "For him, becoming an angel is an insult. This is a psychological attack." The surging anger even changed the chaotic scene in the universe. The rubble and space debris closest to him were shattered and turned into pure energy flows gathered around him. The red-gold flames condensed from the power of millions of star explosions and the power of binary stars gradually enveloped the universe where he and the angel were. The angel was no longer emotionless. She smiled. "Angels should not speak foul language. You should be punished." Shenyan's face gradually disappeared in the red-gold flames, but his eyes were still clearly visible, black and white, without any trace of energy. Only extreme anger surged in them. The space around him began to break up little by little, and the flying dimensional fragments screamed away from here. They would reunite here at some point, and the world will repair this place, but not now. With the continuous sound of breaking, Shenyan finally made his choice. He crossed the boundary at that moment, taking the angel with him. The gorgeous and magnificent scenery in the endless sea of stars quickly passed by them. The angel still had a smile on her face, but Shenyan, contrary to his usual behavior, took the initiative to stay away from her. He gritted his teeth, took a deep breath, and tried to calm himself down. But the voices in his ears were too complicated, and his breathing became more and more rapid. How can a magician be unable to cast a spell? Generally speaking, there are two answers to this question. First, limit his ability to cast spells. For example, set up a formation nearby that can block magic power. If the magic power cannot run smoothly, the spells without energy sources will naturally not have any effect, or simply get close to the distance and engage in close combat. Quite a number of mages have no way to deal with this, unless your surname is Gan. Second, disrupt his thoughts. The casting of any spell requires calmness and carefulness, especially powerful spells. If someone interferes with the casting of a spell, the consequences will naturally be extremely serious. The spell countermeasures most used by mages in the Civil War also come from this, using mental tentacles to disrupt the opponent's brain, making him lose the intention to cast spells, and even backfire. The angel did the latter to him. Through her unreserved blessing and the certification of the eternal heaven, she made Shenyan an officially certified angel in countless worlds at that moment. It took the angels 120,000 years to reach Shenyan's world. During this time, they had plenty of time to conquer the worlds along the way. This means that Shenyan now has to face the sincere prayers of every human being in every world conquered by the angels in the past 120,000 years. His soul seemed to be torn apart. The countless huge prayers made him grit his teeth and exhale cold air from the gaps between his teeth. The angel looked at him with a smile, not attacking directly, but looking at him with expectant eyes. "Come on, Master," she said sincerely, slowly clenching her hands and posing a prayer posture. "Join us. Join this supreme glory. Under the grace of the Lord, save the world." They will die proudly, and their souls will become our future power. You will be respected by countless worlds. As long as you want, Master, as long as you want. Her face finally showed fanaticism, You can even become the incarnation of God. No one in the eternal heaven will have any objection to this. Come, accept the prayer. Join us. Join us. Fuck you. Shenyan closed his eyes and wanted to curse, but he couldn't do it. Just resisting the prayer was enough to distract him, and he was still analyzing the existence of the angels. There were too many people praying, and he couldn't get rid of the influence at all. You know, the angel gave him a blessing. How can you get rid of the blessing? The angel approached him little by little, expecting, waiting, and eagerly looking forward to it. She let go of her hand, held the mage's face devoutly, and looked at his painful expression, with only happiness in her eyes. She was a composite existence, forged by the souls of thousands of angels. But she was not created for killing, but for love. Who to love? The angel looked at Shenyan's face with love and smiled. The blessing was naturally not without cost. The higher the blessing, the deeper the cost. But the angels were prepared. In the past years, they used this set to deal with countless people who blocked their way, and the angels believed that Shenyan would become one of them, and, as time passed, he would become the strongest among the angels. This was the first cross-border mage whose weakness they found. If he was not a stupid so-called guardian, how could the angels have a way to deal with a cross-border mage? Her breath was getting weaker and weaker, but her expression was getting calmer and calmer. The wizard was still trying his best to resist, but there were too many people praying, and he had no way to resist so many devout souls. The angel had already foreseen that when she died, it would be the time for him to be reborn. This was fine. She looked at him gently, and just as she was about to say something, Shenyan opened his eyes. If Strange was here, he would immediately recognize this look. He had seen it too many times. When they fought against the devil together but were forced into a dead end, Shenyan had shown this look. When they faced the overwhelming aliens, Shenyan had shown this look. Of course, there was also the time when Shenyan pulled out half of his soul and merged it into the world barrier in front of him. But the angel was not Strange. She didn't know what this look meant. She only saw Shenyan smiling. A sense of uneasiness began to gather in her heart. Why are you laughing? No, that's not right. You should be in pain. You should be reborn in pain. Reborn as the incarnation of God bathed in supreme glory. Listen carefully, you bastard. Shenyan pulled her close and whispered in her ear. I have completely understood your form of existence. You understand? She couldn't say this because Shenyan once again started the crossover. A dazzling blue light flashed by, and they returned to the dark universe again. At the same time, the mage raised his right hand tremblingly, and put his index finger and middle finger together, pointing at his temple. His eyes turned pure black. The angel's pupils shrank sharply and screamed, no. However, it was too late. The messenger of death killed himself with authority. He no longer breathed, but his body, which still had great power, gradually calmed down, and the pain and life disappeared together. The angel stared at him in a daze, and his expression gradually became crazy. Why did this angel exist? To make Shenyan one of them, to love him, and to let him feel their love. But now, he is dead. No, 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 she roared, her hands trembling, but the lost power could not be recovered. The object of her blessing was dead. The death of a quasi-angel made countless worlds controlled by them weep together, and also made her shed tears. Cracks began to appear on her beautiful cheeks, like broken porcelain. The traces of the brokenness spread little by little, and finally covered her whole body. With a desperate cry and a burst of white light from her body surface, she died. Done. Chapter 649. I still want to try. The first thing he felt was peace. Of course, there was also relief, but what else? The thought of raising your hand floated through Shenyan's consciousness, and his soul, which had fallen into endless darkness, faithfully executed this thought. The vast spiritual power surged out from the realm of nothingness, outlining a simple shape in the darkness, which looked like a stick drawing with the most basic character lines. Interesting. This is what I look like after I die. Shenyan stared at his right hand thoughtfully, and the fact that he was dead did not stir up any waves in his heart. At this moment, what he cared about most was what kind of secrets were hidden behind this state. The mage's desire for knowledge is really stubborn and terrible. Where am I? After observing carefully for a while, He didn't get any useful information, so he simply raised his head to observe the surroundings, but there was nothing around, only darkness. What surprised even himself was that the mage did not feel any discomfort. On the contrary, he felt it was warm and comfortable here. It was like a room that belonged to you, with thick curtains drawn. The temperature was suitable, and the pillows exuded fragrance. Just lie down and you will sleep forever, and you don't have to worry about any suffering in the world. Whether it was the need to get up early for work tomorrow or the huge debts behind you, they were all gone. The only thing in front of you was a good sleep. He sighed with fatigue and sat down with that simple body. Then he even felt unsatisfied and simply lay down in an unguarded posture. In the past, Shenyan had heard an interesting theory. When people die, they will repeat everything in their life in front of their eyes. According to this theory, everyone may not be at peace, whether it is good or bad. When death comes, most people may just want peace. Shenyan now just wants to be alone for a while. He feels very tired. Very tired. All the past flashed before his eyes. His stubborn wish, the teacher who deceived him, the world he saved, and those who regarded him as a god and savior, and his friends. The mage's mouth drew a smile. The darkness was still comfortable, making him unable to break free. In fact, his spirit was slowly dissipating. The feeling of the afterlife was too wonderful, and the free and easy feeling of not having to care about anything was really fascinating. What a pity! He sighed again, and his spirit, which had dissipated to only a pair of eyes, suddenly became solid. The surging magic power that came from nowhere enveloped him, and a voice sounded above his head. You refused, my messenger. Death floated in and came as promised. She is the first person every dead person sees after death, and also their final comfort. When Shenyan was about to refuse her, she came. You killed yourself with power, and then you refuse this sweet peace. Why? Death looked at him patiently, hoping to get an answer. The mage replied, because I still have unfinished business. But you have done enough, haven't you? Death asked doubtfully. What else can make you leave this tranquility? She waved her hand. The darkness pulled away, and countless souls sleeping quietly here appeared. Among them were former universe overlords, madmen who conquered thousands of worlds, madmen who were crazy about love and were willing to slaughter the world, and mothers who missed their sons until their death. At this moment, they were all sleeping here, quietly, without a sound of pain. Shenyan looked at them, and the beautiful scene made him a little disappointed for a while, but only for a moment. He said, I still have one thing to do. I can't forget it. What is it? Go home. Shenyan smiled. I learned magic for this, and I also tore my soul apart like a madman to cross the border for this. I can't forget this, and I can't abandon it. For me, it has surpassed all of this. But you won't go home at all costs. Yes. Shenyan nodded gently. I want to go home because I want my parents to see me now. I want to tell them what kind of person I have become. I hope that I can hold my head high and tell them that I am an amazing person. I have become the person that every boy dreams of. I am a hero. I have saved many worlds. My name is an epic. People remember my name because they will always remember what I have done. So I will always keep a part of my bottom line. Things change, and I hope that I will never be changed. Scythorn said that I will definitely lose my humanity over a long period of time. He may be right, but the wizard smiled helplessly. I still want to try. Death made way for him. In the dark universe, a cold body without breathing was floating in it. He was wearing a black robe, with a handsome face and closed eyes. A spaceship was flying towards here. There were colorful external lights on the hull, flashing, looking like a laser light ball on the dance floor. The ship was called the Benatar, and it belonged to Star-Lord, a man who was famous among the stars. He is a chivalrous thief and mercenary, a part-time explorer, and an incurable hedonist. Of course, his friends prefer to call him an idiot with full of love, or disgust. In the cockpit, hey, Gamora. Peter Quill, imitating Thor's bearded Star-Lord, grinned at his girlfriend and walked slowly. In his hands were two high-heeled glasses, with fluorescent liquid flashing inside and exuding a fragrant aroma. Gamora, with green skin, smiled slightly and stretched lazily. Peter was stunned by her beautiful curves, and he quickly handed over a glass of wine. Gamora took a sip. Ah, yes. Is this the bottle of Gomert wine from the auction? Peter, this is very expensive. Compared to you, money is nothing. Gamora's smile was gradually becoming presumptuous. She turned on the automatic driving function, took Peter's wine, and put both glasses of wine on the dashboard, and then pushed him to the ground fiercely. Looking at Gamora, who was gradually taking off her clothes, Peter swallowed his saliva and said uneasily, Gamora, they are having a party, but the door is not locked yet. Then lock it, Peter. Gamora licked her lips, tilted her head and looked at him, smiling seductively. You are the captain. Star-Lord jumped up from the ground and wanted to lock the door of the cabin, but at the same time, a slightly dull collision sound stopped him. Peter turned around and stared at the man who crashed into the spaceship with Gamora in amazement. There is one more chapter. Let's have a meal first, and then come later. Chapter 650. I died. Alas, I lived again. Thor. Peter hurriedly dived into the crowd on the dance floor and found Thor, who was wearing a vest and drinking with two women. He smiled very happily, perhaps because the two women were very much to his taste. Thor, I have something to tell you. Oh, isn't this Peter? Thor not only ignored him, but even hugged him in his arms and began to introduce the two ladies. Ladies, let me introduce you. This is the captain of this ship, Peter Quill, also known as Star-Lord. The woman on the left covered her mouth in surprise, and her blue skin turned pink. Ah, I've heard of your name, Captain. She smiled and stretched out her hands to shake hands with Peter, and her fingers lightly scratched his palm twice. Peter pulled his hand back awkwardly. He didn't want to be unfaithful to Gamora. The woman on the right looked at him for a long time before she said with certainty, well, I've seen you. I've definitely seen you. Yes, I'm quite famous. But we can talk about that later. Sorry, ladies, I have to borrow Thor. He laughed dryly and walked towards the cabin with Thor. Thor, whose temper gradually improved, did not blame him for disturbing his leisure time. He just took another sip of wine and asked, what happened? Did the ship hit a black hole again? Didn't the autopilot break down last time? And, hasn't that thing been repaired? No. Peter hurriedly pressed his hand on the authentication unlocking screen of the cabin door, waiting for the verification to pass, and said very quickly, you have to see it with your own eyes. I mean, Thor, you have to see it with your own eyes. I don't know how to describe it. Seeing him like this, Thor finally frowned. He had known Peter for a long time, and this guy was a reliable person in most cases. He was very reliable both in missions and in life. What could make him like this? After thinking for a while, he said shockingly, Gamora is finally pregnant? Then you shouldn't ask me, although we do have a good relationship, but I don't want to be the best man. What? What are you talking about? Looking at Peter's doubtful eyes, Thor shrugged. You two make too much noise every night, and I have good hearing. So he gestured. She is pregnant? Peter began to work on the complicated password lock on the door of the cabin. A rage. If someone locked the door from the inside, it would be very troublesome to open it. For safety reasons, he had to let Gamora lock it again after he came out. After all, the person lying inside has countless enemies in the universe. The sound of beeping continued to ring, and Peter entered the 3-digit password one by one. At the same time, he also denounced Thor as nonsense. Why do you think so? We have taken good security measures. Okay, don't guess anymore. Come in with me. Thor pouted and took another sip of wine. After entering the password, Peter opened the door. There was a person lying on the tactical table in the cab. Gamora stood beside him with an anxious expression. Thor glanced at him casually, and then his eyes were fixed on that person. What's going on? What? He took 2 steps at a time and walked to the tactical table. His first reaction was to cover his forehead. A flash of lightning had already jumped up and down in his eyes, even overflowing from his eye sockets. Peter saw this scene just after he closed the door, and quickly comforted him. Don't, Thor, we are on the ship. Thor took a deep breath and calmed down temporarily. He covered his mouth in disbelief, and the heavy breathing echoed in the cab, one after another, and the sound of him sniffing. Thor put down his hand, then pointed at the person lying on the tactical table, with his mouth wide open. as if he wanted to say something. But he couldn't say anything. In the end, he had to support the tactical table with both hands and lowered his head. "What's going on?" he asked in a low voice. After the narration, Thor temporarily ignored Peter's words and intentions to hide why he and Gamora were alone in the cockpit. He just frowned and thought, "You said he was floating in the universe?" "Where?" Gamora opened the touchscreen computer on the cabin next to her, and the holographic projection was released. "Sotako Galaxy, A7 sector. In fact, we are here now." After discovering him, we stopped immediately. Thor's fingers tapped quickly on the tactical table. He learned this from Shenyan. Thinking of this, Thor's mood became irritable again. He just went out to travel and relax for a while, but found the body of his friend in the universe? Someone must pay the price for this. Thor's gloomy expression was very intimidating to Peter. "You know, Thor has always been very optimistic since they met. He always maintains a positive attitude at all times and places, and he has never seen him so depressed." Peter couldn't help but feel a little toothache. Besides, he also knew who the man lying on the tactical table was. If someone could kill him, then no matter who the murderer was, the universe might be in chaos again. "Peter, I need you to do me a favor." Thor's heavy eyes made Peter nod without hesitation. "You say?" "I want you to stop this party and let all the irrelevant people on the ship leave." "Where are we going this time?" "Trading Star, where Raccoon took a job there," Gamora interrupted. "Take the big guy and Groot." "Yes, that's right." Thor patted his cheek to calm himself down. "Let's go to Earth first." "Okay." "I have to go back to Earth." "No problem, buddy," Peter agreed readily. "I understand you." "Okay, I'll go out now and let them leave my ship." When Star-Lord is serious, his mobility is amazing, considering that some people are already extremely drunk. He even took a beam pistol to prevent anyone from causing trouble. Thor watched him leave, pursed his lips, and looked at the mage lying on the stage without a sound. He couldn't help but feel sad for a moment. He had never thought that Shenyan would die, and this idea had never even appeared in his mind. How could he die? "How could you die?" Thor even asked this question. "You saved Asgard. You saved my father from death, and even made my sister, whose merits were erased, willing not to commit too many murders." Gamora stared at him with complicated eyes. Like Peter, she had never seen this man so emotional. She lowered her head, unwilling to let herself face the scene, but because of this, she saw a scene that almost stopped her heart. She raised her hand tremblingly and patted Thor on the shoulder. Thor, he doesn't seem to be dead." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.